You there, Dave?
I am here.
I don't see your picture though.
No, that's because my camera's turned off.
Okay.
Okay, 35 are watching us, and I believe we have started. Okay, I think I was, you're hearing us. There you are. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if we can admit if it automatically admits everybody or if we're just on by ourselves right now.
There we go. That should be it. You there? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Still can't see if your
Right.
camera's.
Yeah, that's because my camera's still turned off.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm controlling all that. The only people who are going to do me in are. Oh, it's still turned off. That's weird. Well, hello everyone who's watching. Sorry, bear with us for a minute. Okay. Well, we can hear me at least. Hmm. Let me make sure that this is. That's so weird. Well, hello everyone. Lee, we are live. So you can say hello to people. They're in the chat while I'm trying to find my camera.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have the chat bar pulled up, so I can't see who all is on. But welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. We'll get through these technical issues. The Zoom officially starts at 6 o'clock, so we were just using a few minutes ahead of time to try to work through any technical difficulties we might have.
For this type for this very reason.
Yeah. Now, did you allow Zoom to access your camera?
Yep, it should not be a problem. Strange.
So while we're waiting, if anybody can hear us, if you look
People
behind,
can hear us. We're live.
okay. Well, behind my head, you can see my part of my wall of fame here. So I'm going to duck out for a second. Oh, you can see the Smile front cover and back cover behind me. I've got some autographed items up above it. I got a Pet Sounds album, a Sunflower album, and then behind me we've got the Brian Wilson Presents Smile and Orange Crate art. But yeah, this is what's referred to by my family as my Beach Boys room, as my music room. But everything that's in here, probably 80% of it is related to Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. If I swing over real quick, this is, let's see if we can get it. That's most of my Beach Boys and Brian Wilson albums and 45s in that closet. Most of my books are on the other side. But I think the bottom line is that Brian Wilson's music has meant a lot to me over the course of my life, and I chose at a point, probably maybe 20, no, probably more like 30 years ago, maybe 40 years ago, to try to collect all of the recordings of both the Beach Boys and Brian, all of his outside productions, all the Beach Boys albums and 45s, mono, stereo, promo, store copies, everything. And so I've got a whole room that's dedicated to it. I've actually overflowed this room. I ended up having to take a number of things and put them in a secure off-site storage just because I ran out of room. But there's at times when there's nothing more settling to me when I'm upset or having a bad day than putting on Pet Sounds or some of Brian's music. As I'm sure a lot of you are the same way. All right, Dave, we can see you now. Now we can't hear you. You traded off.
Can you?
Yeah. All right. Now we got audio and video.
Good. Okay. Yeah, it turned out my camera wasn't plugged in. That's good.
All right.
It wasn't even plugged in. So
Okay.
bear with me. So yeah, I didn't know what to get ready.
Oh, your audio just cut out.
Oh, yeah, it can't.
Oh yeah, turn the light on.
This is turn the light on.
No, not the light in your room. Turn the light on in the small box.
It's
it's on. Okay. All right. That is so cool.
And then Mike's autograph up here, Al. And then I got
Brian and Bruce. That's awesome. And tell them the story of how you got it. What was it? It was
yeah. Yeah. Okay, I think I can.
your audio is cutting out a little bit every now and then. Okay. How about for me? Everybody able to hear my audio okay?
Yeah, okay, let me just do something with my audio. I think I did. I definitely need. Well, the reason, Lisa, the way that I have, I think everyone can hear both of us, but we're both coming through my, when we talk in time, I'm trying to, let me see if I can select speaker. Okay, hold on. Say something, Lee.
Something.
Okay, that should be, we should both be able to overlap now.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you. We have some joining us in a little bit. Not everyone at once. I think one of the problems I have.
Do you have noise cancellation on or anything?
Let me think. When I do regular Zooms where I'm just recording, I use the speaker to listen to, but what's happening is I'm getting a delayed. Sorry, everyone. We want to get this right before our first guest arrives. Okay. I'm just listening for a minute. Lee, can you give me a test?
Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay.
Because my delay is like over almost 30 seconds.
No, okay.
Because it's through this platform that, let me think if there's a way for me.
I'm going to duck out of the screen just for a second because I'm going to pull the YouTube channel up on my other iPad so that I can actually see the chat, because the chat's coming to the YouTube channel, and I've got the Zoom channel on and my main iPad right here. Okay, I'm back.
Okay. Hey, I think I did it.
And we're back.
Okay. That's it. Good. I think I got rid of the echo. I had to just close the other window. Okay.
Oh, okay. Good.
All right, folks. So we do have, thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for bearing with us while we sort out. That's a good thing we started early, boy. We'd be in trouble right now. So Lee's got some things. If you're just tuning in right now, Lee's got kind of his wall of glory there behind him. And I didn't know what to bring. So I got my light up smile box. And the story behind this is I got married on 11/11/11. And as a gift, Jennifer Valentine at Universal sent this to me with, and this is the light up box with Brian's autograph on it. And then over time, I got Bruce and Mike and Al to sign it too. But this came as a wedding gift. Clearly, they didn't have my mind when they sent it. But, and then I have the autographed Pet Sound Sessions box set. Brian signed this for me when Lee and I were at Masterphonic Studio in Nashville, Tennessee, when we were there for Brian's Imagination album recording sessions, which was early February of '98, shortly before Carl passed away. And then this, of course, the '93 box set. Both of these are David Leaf projects, and I love them to death. And then here's the, I didn't know what else to put down here. So this is just the Smile box set, real tapes. I wanted something Brian related, and I wore the Smile shirt too today. So now we'll get.
Yeah, so let's see. I'll stand up here. I've got the just the straightforward Brian Wilson shirt on. I actually pulled out about 5 or 6 different shirts. I was actually thinking about doing every 30 minutes doing a wardrobe change to a different shirt. We'll see. We'll see if we do that.
I had 4 Brian shirts out, and I almost wore the Radio City Music Hall shirt because that stood the test of time. But okay. But hey, I turned off my light so we could see the light up box, which didn't work very well. But I want to turn on my lights so I can.
Right.
Okay. All right. So.
All right, and now I can look at the chat and I can see a lot of people on here.
Great. Welcome.
Paul Christian looks like may have been the first person on.
Okay, well, I wanted to send some shout outs to start. First, I want to say hello to anyone from the Beach Boys subreddit group who might be joining in. The Good Time and Podcast guys who I've been on their podcast a few times. Giggins, who I don't think he's on yet, but he'll be joining later. Our friend Steve Lewis from the Beach Boys Basement with Steve Lewis. Matthew Hart and his good buddy Adam, who they have a podcast. And then, of course, Katie Webb and friends who are in Pennsylvania this evening, gathered together and celebrating Brian's birthday. We're there in spirit, and we're sorry we can't be with you. So this is kind of our way of wanting to do something, and it's been a while since Lee and I have done something together, and this felt as appropriate time as any. And we will have guests coming up soon. And if you, depending on who you follow on Facebook, you may have even seen one of them post about it. But we'll have some guests coming up soon. One around this about 10 minutes or so from now. A fella who goes all the way back. So you should have some fun stories. And but Lee, I'd like to, as you're looking at the chat, I'd like to kind of ask you. Today's Brian's birthday, but it's been a little while since he left us. And, what type of, if you've been listening to his music, what type of reflections you might have this evening.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that, to be honest, I probably prepared myself for 20 years. I mean, we've gotten more time out of Brian, God bless him, than a lot of us thought we would. Thanks to, I think, a lot has to do with the love of all the fans and family and everybody that's cared for him, and Gloria and people that are there that have been there with him day to day. Gloria Ramos, and it's one of those things to where the news hurt, but I've been telling myself for years and years, the music's going to go on. The music is his soul. The music is going to go on, and I'll be able to continue to listen to the music, think about Brian, think about the times I've met him, and everything else, and continue to celebrate his life through the music.
Yeah. Uh, I just recently, just so that people who are watching, I just recently started a job as an office administrator at a church, and the pastor there, Jeff Lindsay, he's quite a fan. So he actually devoted part of his sermon last week to Brian, which was lovely. And he had some quotes that he put on a piece of paper from his sermon, and I saw it laying there when I came into work this week, and I grabbed it. And I wanted to read these. These are quotes from Brian. If there's not love present, it's much, much harder to function. When there's love present, it's easier to deal with life. I consider myself to be a crusader of love. I try to spread love around the world as best I can because I know I have a handle on love. Last quote. First of all, I want people to understand that I'm here to create for them, to create music for people so they'll know that I'm a source of love and they can depend on my name.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And the outpouring of worldwide affection and love and appreciation for Brian. I've talked to several people about this since, including you, Lee, since this has happened. And I've said this a couple times now. If there's a Mount Rushmore of music, whoever those heads will be, I still think Brian's on top of the Mount Rushmore. You can have the others below it. And I'm not being silly or facetious about this. I mean that. When Paul McCartney, who's, I think, the other guy, when his day comes and he passes away, he'll receive this level of accolade, deservedly so. But many other people, maybe there's Willie Nelson, a Dolly Parton, but there's not many people who will receive this level of adoration, respect, love, like Brian. And, even McCartney has publicly through the years endorsed Brian and has said Pet Sounds is as good as it gets. He's bought a copy of Pet Sounds for every one of his children because he feels, Paul does, that you're not musically educated until you've heard Pet Sounds. So that's why I put Brian at the top, because of that type of sentiment, and that someone of Paul McCartney's stature feels that way about Brian Wilson.
And the tributes have come from all generations of
Yeah,
musicians and famous people, and it's my son, who's not ironically and purposefully named Brian, he's into rap music, and so he's into hip hop rap, and so he follows people like Frank Ocean, Tyler the Creator, and others, and he's been sending me all of the quotes that have been coming from people of his generation, saying about what a profound impact Brian Wilson has had on them, and how they feel about him.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I saw Flea did like a live, Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who played, I guess it's been about a decade or a little bit more than a decade. He played on Al's track, Au revoir, My Plane Leaves Tomorrow, which is on Al's new Islands in the Sun EP. Flea plays taps at the end of that, and he was the one who came out, and, like, because Sly Stone died, just the day before.
Yeah.
So that's what really stood out to me, was that, like you say, I know there was a tribute from Metallica. I know there was a tribute, Sting. I mean, everybody, like musicians around the world, if they were actually performing on either the day before, or I should say the day after Brian passed away, everyone did a tribute. I mean, it's like this. It's and every news network, had something to say about this guy, in the United States as well as abroad. I mean, it's quite remarkable, and one of the things I think is interesting about the Beach Boys is that they were always so accessible to me, through the years, and I think they are to people in general. They just seem accessible, and so, like, when somebody like Brian leaves us, it's kind of, because I had the privilege of meeting him and his company, he just seemed accessible, and so it's kind of odd that he's gone, but I haven't felt sadness yet. I think I just have such a great appreciation for what he gave us. And when I went and got in my car, that it was so warm outside and the sun was shining and the sky was blue, and I just felt, this is something I have always felt, going back a little bit. In my life, generally speaking, when I look up and it's a nice sunny day and I see clouds, I always think about the connectivity of the world, because even though I'm just looking at what's above me, you can be in California regardless of the time of day, and you can be looking up, and that all is connected. So I've always thought, so when I got my car when he passed away, that's what occurred to me, and that's what I felt was this kind of peace. I mean, who gets to leave that type of I mean, something behind for everyone to enjoy, on such a level. He just was. I beg your pardon, folks. I think I'm just going to let my first guest know. All right, hopefully he'll be popping in here. But gosh, I don't take it away. I'm going to read some comments. I'm just seeing such wonderful. I didn't even know somebody wrote about Peter Gabriel. Did a tribute on Twitter. Huge Genesis. I love Genesis too. Allison Ehrenberg, she wrote, "Is it anybody else still in denial, or is it just me?" Lee, I think I'm similar to you, that when this happened, I haven't been and I hope this doesn't come out sounding more morbid or anything, or morose, but Brian has had the fact that he had such a successful and wonderful solo career, and went on to do such, wrote interesting songs, and Reimagines Gershwin is
so beautiful.
That Lucky Old Son are both triumphs to me. Really, like, you can listen to that Lucky Old Son, and it's almost it's very similar to me as Al Jardine's A Postcard from California. Both of those album cycles, having Van Dyke write the poetry, the spoken word that Brian did, for Brian even to come forward and do spoken word like that is such a moment in time. Now, I'm assuming automatically that anybody who's watching this evening, hey Jeff McAvoy, hey John Tilden, hello Ron Vaccaro, glad you are here. Ron works with ESQ, so I want to give him a shout out. Lori Biagini, sorry if I'm saying that wrong. But hello to everyone who's joining. Yes, Daniela Veladez. Yes, that Lucky Old Son is my personal favorite. Yeah, I mean, Van Dyke Parks, anytime you took Van Dyke Parks and Brian Wilson, you put them together, there's just really something specifically that is just really magic. And uh, going back to '95 when that Orange Crate art came out, and that was still before Smile was finished.
Mm-hmm.
It was like this, this grand revealing of these two guys, because here was something that was completed, that we got to enjoy, that actually came out. And just I'll just rattle on, Lee. So you should just jump in whenever you want.
Orange Crate Art. I love the story from Van Dyke about Orange Crate Art, about how he had created the album, and he kind of tricked Brian into coming in. He's like, "Hey, Brian, I want you to come in and just lay some demos down for some vocals, and and we'll put some other vocals on it and everything." They ended up getting a whole album out of it. And I think Brian was actually quoted as telling Van Dyke, "Hey, you tricked me." But yeah, that's I remember when that came out, and just the fact that just the two of them getting back together. It wasn't a songwriting collaboration, but the two of them just being together, and Van Dyke being able to write songs that he knew in his mind that Brian would be singing, and then for Brian to get on and layer his multi-layer vocals on top of it. I remember at the time it was just so exciting for that to come out.
Yeah. And I think what it did for Brian, I can only guess, but it just seemed to me that collaboration at that time, and then it actually coming out, kind of showed Brian that the two of them could work together, and find completion. And I think that's kind of what, slowly kind of the tides turning, if you will, for even an idea or a hope that something like for Brian to realize Smile, right. 8-9 years later. I just think that and for them to bring Van Dyke back, for him to help complete the pieces that weren't quite done yet.
Yeah.
Gosh, so as we're waiting for our first guest, I don't know.
I want to show something. I've been digging into the archives.
You do that. I'm going to read the comments over. I want to read. Okay. I want to say hi to everybody.
I'm going to hold this up, but then I won't be able to read it. So I'll let you read it, or maybe I can actually read it on the screen. So, it's in reverse for me. So,
dear ESQ readers, I'll go to your left a little bit. Not the camera. Yeah. Yes. No. Come down just a little bit. So it says, "Dear ESQ readers, I want to wish you all a very happy holiday season. Let's all work together and share a new year and day, 1997. Brian." That's one of the, in fact, after we went to Masterphonics, remember he had sent us a handwritten note like that we, like, "Dave, it was good to see you and Lee and Nashville," and we ran that. Yeah. I mean, just, I think I still can't believe we had those opportunities.
Oh yeah. We were spoiled. Yeah.
We got a little spoiled. We were so anyone watching who's never met Brian, I'll say this. This is true certainly with Dennis as well. If you listen to Brian's music, and that means you could just be listening to the instrumentals off the Pet Sound Sessions box set. If you listen to Brian's music, and and it has affected you because you're here tonight, then Brian. It was certainly a privilege and an honor to be in his company, get his autograph, get a photo, have dinner, which I was very fortunate to have once with him. But he was a really regular guy. As hard as that is to believe, because he did what he did musically, but when you were just around him, he just really was a kind soul. I mean, he just was a kind soul. And it just warms my heart that we even have the opportunity to talk about him.
Mm-hmm.
Because and like Brian, we have Billy Hinchy, who passed in 2021, Melinda, who passed just last year, early in the year, and
Andy Paley,
Andy Paley, and Jeffrey Foskett,
Joe Thomas.
Joe Thomas. Gosh, yes, geez. Man, I mean,
And then all the musicians, Hal Blaine, and all the musicians that were
oh yeah,
so instrumental in his sound.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's but I let me just think for a minute. What could we? So I'm going to look at the chat here while we're waiting for our first guest, and
Yeah, the regular guy part of it. You know, if you were eating dinner with Brian, there, you know, you could be sitting there, and he might reach, if you had like a dessert he wanted a bite of, he might reach over and say, "Hey, can I have some of that?"
okay, so I'll tell one story. This is,
and actually, he would already have his spoon in his hand when he said that.
his food would probably already be gone from the plate.
Yeah.
And oh yes, Nicky Wonder. Thank you, Jeff McAvoy. Nicky Wonder. Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, yes, he passed in 2019. That's still hard to believe.
I know.
He was so cool. He was so cool. And he and Darian and well, it was him and Darian in the beginning. Huh? They sought out. I mean, they were put in from the very beginning. You know, finding Brian where Brian lived, and you know, they were just so into it. And that's before the highway was ever built. They went to his old house. They did the whole thing. And thank God, because look, you know, Darian is fortunately still with us. But Nicky, gosh, I remember when you and I were in Philadelphia, went to see Brian's show in Philadelphia, and we sat with Nicky over dinner, and how dialed into the music he was, and how much he loved talking about the music, how much he enjoyed it. And
remember before the show, we were talking to Nick, and we said, "Hey, there's a bunch of fans over at the pub across the street. You want to go over there?" He's like, "Yeah, let's go over there."
Yeah, they were all. I think because what Brian did for the world musically, I think that's what made him seem maybe otherworldly or unapproachable. And he was a big guy.
Yeah.
But just like Mike and Al, in his own way, he was very approachable. Unless, of course, he decided he didn't want to talk to somebody, and that was a whole different story. That was he had a very good way of just getting out of whatever.
Yeah.
So I can't remember who told me this story, but so it's not a firsthand account on my part, but I just think it's funny, and I want to share it because I think it's really funny. So I guess one night after a show, as the show was ending, Brian really had to go to the bathroom, really bad. And they were walking along, I guess, like a backstage pier or something to get to the bathroom. And they were walking. He really had to go. And he said to, I don't know if it was Nelson Bragg or not, but who told me the story, because that was that person who was with him. And they say he really had to go. And there was a jacket sitting on the ground. And Brian said to the person, "Hey, whose jacket is that?" And they said, "It's Paul's." And Brian said, "Do you think he'd mind?" Meaning, if
he needed a spot,
Brian had said, "No, go for it," Brian would have, you know, in the moment, because Brian lived in the moment. That's what I love about that. Brian always lived in the moment. When you and I were at Master Phonics studio, I remember him before he came in, and after he was done recording, there was a guitar hanging on the wall. And I remember watching him go to the guitar that was just hanging there, and he took it off the wall and he just started playing it. And it was horribly out of tune, but it was just interesting to see how he was attracted to music.
Hmm.
Just he would look around and just so he sees a hanging guitar, he would go over to the hanging guitar. But yeah,
So my unfiltered Brian story was this was I think it was the show at in Rosemont, Illinois, early on. And I think maybe I can't remember. It wasn't the first Imagination show. I think maybe it was the second show on the tour. And we were backstage, and this guy walks up to Brian, and and says, "Hey, Brian." And this guy, let me set the stage. So this guy is like wearing his Armani suit, his Gucci shoes, and he walks up to Brian. He goes, "Hey, Brian, I want to introduce myself. I'm a vice president with Shure Company, Shure." And Brian goes, "Huh? Sure?" And he goes, "Sure. The company that makes microphones." And Brian looks at him and goes, "Oh, you make a lot of money doing that?" And the guy was kind of taken aback, and he didn't know what to say. And he said, I do okay, Brian." But it's the whole, it was in the moment. That's what Brian's thinking. Here's this guy, and he's got this expensive suit on. He's got these expensive shoes on, and what popped into Brian's mind was, well, what if he makes a lot of money doing that?
yeah, I don't think that Brian could be totally off base here, but I've never gotten the impression from him that he was a fancy guy. Like he, I mean, I'm sure he lived comfortably. I mean, he's had a nice house. But he just never struck me as a fella that needed needed fancy or gratuitous. None of that behavior in him. He really just genuinely just lived in music. He lived in music, right? I mean, that's Don Was told me. I think it was after when I interviewed him after the No Peer Pressure album, because Don played on the last song, literally called the last song. And he was saying that that's how that's how you talk to Brian is through music. Brian, that's his communication tool. That's his thing. And oh my gosh, so yeah, we're still waiting. So wait, let me read something. Mark Lewis wrote, "Lucky to have caught Brian every time he and his band in Toronto. Always a great show." And then when the Bare Naked Ladies showed up, hey, so let's talk about that. You and I were at the Roxy back in 2000. And those shows were awesome because Mark Lewis just reminded me Brian actually performed the song Brian Wilson at the shows, which was surreal. Yeah. I mean, it was surreal for Brian Wilson to be singing "I'm Lying in Bed" just like Brian Wilson did in front of an audience. It was very, but that just shows you about his sense of humor. That he could, he was kind of self-effacing to a degree. I don't really have, well, I've got my wonderful story that I mean, thank God I still have it on cassette tape, is that when I interviewed him in 2000 and then did my Paul McCartney impression for him, and he reacted, "That's freaked out. That's unbelievable. That's pretty damn good." And he stood up because I had finished the interview first before I did that. And he stood up and he gave me a big hug. And that was like everything that when that happened, I just was, I was good, I mean, that wasn't even a bucket list type of thing, but for him to appreciate something like that. Okay, well, our first guest is struggling a minute. Okay, bear with me, folks. Lee, take it, because I need to.
All right, let's see. What else can we pull some things out here? I'll just go through some. These are some photos that I've pulled out of my collection from the Smile sessions here. Let's see what else I've got. Brian and Audrey. Let's see. This is I believe from the sunflower promotional press kit. Let's see.
Hello to Anthony Inge, a humble songwriter of the contemporary Mozart. That's so true. Hello, Tom Jones. Been to 500 plus Beach Boys and Brian Wilson shows since '73. A great life. Wow, I'll say. Yeah, that's from the Roxy show, isn't it?
Is it? Yeah, I mean,
I
maybe.
think so.
I think it is.
So.
Yep.
Uh,
Photo credit Tim Gaylord.
let's see here. Oh, I love all these comments. Keep them coming. Anthony, Allison, Daniela. I hope I'm saying your name, Inge Wolf. I love what you wrote there. Contemporary Mozart. Tom Jones, Ilya Murphy, Lori. I'm not sure who Big Meme Ford is. Brian's Burger Sessions. Yes, the infamous Brian's Burger Sessions. Yeah. Yes. That no doubt about that.
All right, let's see here. Let me get to the right page here. And if we're boring people with
yeah, we're sorry. We're
things and
we're waiting on a
let's see here. I gotta find the let me find the seniors here.
okay.
These.
Our guest is having a little difficulty signing in. He's older than we are. So just we had technical difficulties starting the show. So you can only imagine someone who's in their 80s. So bear with him. It's probably the oldest, now that I think about it.
All right, here we go. Okay. All right. This is the 1960 Hawthorne High School El Molino yearbook. This actually belonged to Louis Murata, who, if anybody knows the early Beach Boys songs, the song "Chug-a-Lug," he gets a shout out in there. Louis checking, was it Louis looking out the rear window? So Louis was a friend and neighbor of the Beach Boys and went to Hawthorne High as well.
And Lee, hold on. I saw a message that if I'm talking, so the way I've got the Zoom set up is whoever's talking has the screen.
Oh,
so
okay.
Before you show that, I just want to note something. Louis was also the keeper of Dennis's board for quite some time.
Oh, yeah. All right. And if you look, I guess.
Here he is.
The page. There's Brian. And I guess not to give anybody else short shrift, let me go back here.
Oh, someone, Lee. So Lee, what you're doing, and I'm going to talk, which means I'll have the screen. But
Okay.
So Leona wrote, first saw them on the Love You tour. Wow, Brian lingering in the background. My parents drove me to the show, sort of like Cameron Crombie's mother did in Almost Famous. I love it.
All right, there's Al with the crew cut.
I thought maybe you had more to show.
Oh, you want me to share some more?
Yeah.
Let me find.
We're waiting for the older fella to figure out his technical difficulties.
All right. Well, let me see.
Boy. And we're gonna probably have an overlap here because, well, no, we got a little bit of time. We got some more guests coming up, and just for all those who are watching, thanks for tuning in. We're sorry we don't have our guest on yet. He's trying to. I'm not sure what's happening on his end, but he'll be hopefully on shortly. We do have several guests scheduled tonight. most of them pretty well known in the Beach Boys world. So they are coming up. But we're hoping to get this first fella on here. But I hate if he doesn't get on here. But I'm going to read the chat here. Stall for time, Lee. Somebody wrote that.
I'm trying to flip through here. I've got.
Hey, so while Lee's flipping through stuff, let me just ask everybody what you thought of the new Al's Island in the Sun song. Right, what you liked. Well, you can show that now. I'll be quiet.
Well, that was Al in his football uniform. I think Brian is. He's in the track pictures, maybe the baseball picture. Yeah. But let's see if we can find. There's the. Let's find here. Okay.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to show some.
Here's Brian. Whoops. Brian sliding in a base there.
And folks, if you look on our website, esquarterly.com, ESQUARTERLY. Now, everyone who's here, I'm hoping you're a subscriber. If you're not an active subscriber, that's okay. But I'm hoping that maybe you got some magazines through the year and you have some magazines. A lot of those photos of Brian from high school, from his yearbook, and Al are in our Hawthorne 1960 edition, which was printed in 2005. And what I started doing last year, and is going to continue through this year, was I hope Brian got to look at them at least, but we started doing these Brian Wilson Productions issues because we wanted what I wanted. I wanted Brian's children. I'm sure Carney and Wendy know a lot, but maybe even they wouldn't know all these other things that Brian did in his early career, because his career as a Beach Boy is very well documented and covered. And I just really wanted to get into Brian's work outside the Beach Boys. And we're going to be continuing that. I've interviewed Danny Hutton. And I've interviewed Stevie Kalinich about A World of Peace Must Come. David Sandler, who worked with Brian on the Spring or American Spring album in the early 70s. So we've got a lot of great interview content. And of course, The Cows in the Pastures will hopefully, be coming out soon.
Yep.
So that's, but and then this is the last edition of ESQ. This is the summer one, celebrating Mike's induction. Brian, and really, it's Mike's induction into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, but it's really a celebration of Brian and Mike as Hall of Fame songwriters and their work together. And this is another one. This is where I listened over a year and a half period before I did this issue. All the outtakes from the great digital releases, Wake the World, and what was the second one that was 2020 sessions? What was that one called, Lee?
Oh gosh.
We're drawing a blank here.
But somebody put it in the chat. Help.
Yes, somebody thank. Yes, that's a great idea. Someone put in the chat. There was the Wake the World, which was the Friends sessions, and then there was the 2020 sessions, and they were both. And to this day, they're just digital releases. But that's what I did. I took all the stuff that was like incomplete songs or leftover pieces of music, everything from my Little Red Book to Lonely Days, and just examined and went into just compiling an entire issue that was just about that period for Brian, because I really wanted people to get a sense of, even though he kind of let the Beach Boys take the reins for 2020, I wanted the fans to get a sense of the stuff that he started, and some of it, as always, with much of Brian's work, got really close to completion.
I thought it was I Can Hear Music, and somebody put in this I Can Hear Music, the 2020 sessions.
Thank you, Little Tomboy Cobra. It's quite a handle.
So somebody had earlier in the chat, somebody had put something about "Guess I'm Dumb," the Glen Campbell single.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the things too is, if you want to play Stump Lee Dempsey, you can name a record that was like a Brian Wilson production or something like that, and I'll try to see if I can, how quickly I can reach into my collection and get it. So here's the "Guess I'm Dumb" single.
And I would point out that the magazine that I just showed everybody, oh, I need to be quiet so they can see the photo. Yeah. So let me see here. So this edition of ESQ, the spring 2025 edition, has got my interview with Glen Campbell in it, talking about Guess I'm Dumb. And I did that with Glen back in 2002. And just, it's interesting. You can probably dial up anything on YouTube and I know you can listen to Guess I'm Dumb on YouTube. And I thought Darian and company, Probin, and who else? Like Paul Von Burtons was involved. I apologize because I know I'll forget somebody. And in the chat, if people would fill this in for me, the song "Strong," that was the Glen Campbell's "Ghost on the Canvas" duet album. And okay, John Tilden's getting a little vicious with us. Not only do you have to stop talking, but Lee needs to say something again to switch focus back. So I have to stop talking, and then you have to start talking, and then hold up whatever it is you're holding up, so that we can satisfy John. John, thank you for.
Well, Dave is not in your nature to stop talking.
I know. John doesn't realize what he's asking.
All right, so let's try it again, because I'm not sure that I thought I saw maybe the picture, but we'll try it again. So this is the Guess I'm Dumb single. Interestingly, it's got produced by Brian Wilson on the side and arranged and conducted by Brian Wilson at the bottom. This is from my personal collection. And Dave, I'm going to switch it over to you, because you actually had the pleasure of interviewing Glen Campbell before he passed away. And you asked him about Guess I'm Dumb, and he had some interesting comments to say. So.
I love that. David Wright just wrote, "It's a beard contest." It must be the. Well, yeah, I don't want to give it away, really. I mean, it was a lovely interview. I would really rather, I guess I feel like I'm hawking the magazine. I guess I am. It turned into a really good interview. I wish it had been longer. But one of the things that Glen does, it's funny, and I'm not the only one, but he did it with me. We're talking about Guess I'm Dumb, and he just broke into it right as I was talking to him. He just, "The way I act don't seem like me." He just broke right into it, and it was really cool that he did that. I'm not sure what has happened to our first guest. Let me, Lee. I'm going to be quiet, and I'm going to see if I can't get this to occur.
All right. Well, I'll take the floor for a little bit and stall for a few minutes here. So one of the things I collect is something called acetates. So back in the days before personal cassette recorders, if a recording artist wanted to take some music home, they could either have the engineer that was engineering a session cut them a reel-to-reel tape if they had a reel-to-reel player at home, or they could actually cut to, on a lathe, a one-off record known as an acetate. A lot of times the artist would want to see how the music sounded on a home stereo system. So, how the public was going to hear it playing it on their stereo. And so the acetate gave them the ability to take it home, put it on a turntable, and listen to it and decide if they wanted any changes in the mix or anything like that. So that's one of the things that I collect in my collection. And so I'll show a couple real quick here. I've got several of them out. One of them this is the acetate for the Lord's Prayer. And it says on it, the Lord's Prayer first time. And this is actually take one of the Lord's Prayer. Very, very similar to the released take, a little bit faster in pace. But that's the writing on that is not Brian's writing. It possibly could be Murray's writing. or it possibly could be Chuck Britz's writing. And I haven't done the handwriting analysis on it to see. Another one real quick. So this is the acetate for Rabbit's Foot, which many people know was the origin of the song Our Car Club. So this was actually intended to be an outside production that Brian was going to do. He was demoing the song for Aldon Music. You can see on there, it's a Gold Star acetate, Aldon Music. Al Nevins and Don Kirshner were Aldon Music. And so Brian had gotten through Lou Adler, I believe, a outside songwriting gig. And so he had, Brian was a fan of the Brill Building and Carole King and Jerry Goffin and Ellie Greenwich, Jeff Barry. And, I think he had aspirations of being able to do that and write songs that would then be recorded by other artists. And so he created this song and had a full production. It's got the Honeys singing "We'll Keep a Rabbit's Foot," and we were able to solve some of the puzzle behind this when we had our interview with Victoria Hale, who was at the time Vicky Coker, because she was there and Brian was telling her that he wanted to record this song about drag racers and the fact that they had a lucky rabbit's foot in the car in order to make sure that they didn't wreck or anything like that. And so we learned a little bit more about that song. So how are we doing, Dave?
Good. Keep going.
All right.
People are enjoying your stuff.
Okay. All right. Let's see. We're on a roll here. I want to make sure I don't step on anything. All right. So this is this is an acetate of "Please Let Me Wonder," and there's a little joke at the bottom of it: Los Beach Boys, la música de los Beach Boys, and the story behind it. I think that just the Los Beach Boys was a joke. I know that there's an acetate out there that has on there as the artist Jan and Dean's Farm Club. And I think it was something that either Jan or Dean happened to be in there when they were typing up the label, the acetate. But but instead of putting Beach Boys, put Jan and Dean's Farm Club. But this version of "Please Let Me Wonder" is slightly different to the released version. The released version of "Please Let Me Wonder" at the very end, it cuts to an instrumental. So you hear, "I love you," and then it cuts to an instrumental for the fade. This one doesn't. This one the group keeps singing all the way through to the end and through the fade. You want me to go pull out some more?
Yeah.
Let's see.
I'm communicating now with our first guest, and
okay.
Not sure exactly what's.
Let's see what we can pull out. Let's see. Let's go back to let's go to the vinyl records here. I'm going to focus on Brian and Brian's productions here. I've got to go past about 7 or 8 copies of the Candic single. Okay, let's start here. This is "The Surfer Moon" by Bob and Sherry. That was Brian's first outside production. Let's see. Not a production, but something that Brian sang on. This is Barbie and "What Is a Young Girl Made Of?" So there's 2 versions of this. This is the black vinyl version of this. And then also, for some odd reason, they pressed up a few copies of this record. on colored vinyl. And I think the story behind these is Hype Morgan, who first recorded the Beach Boys. His son, Bruce Morgan, ended up having a bunch of copies of this record in his garage or in his storage or in some storage unit or something like that, that in the 1970s were, I think there's a story, and I don't remember who it was, basically called up Bruce and said, hey, I'm a fan of Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. Do you have any copies of the Surfing single or anything like that, in your possession you'd be interested in selling? And I think Bruce said, well, I don't think I have any extra copies of the Candix Surfing single, but I got this Kenny and the Cadets record that Brian sung on. And so there were a number of copies of that turned up then. Not a whole lot of them, but that's Mark Moore. According to Bob Norberg, Jan Berry wrote the string arrangement for the Surfer Moon.
Yeah.
And
according to Cheryl Pomeroy too.
Yep. And Vicky Coker, Victoria Hale, said she was there when Brian, because she and Bob recorded a version as the Summer Moon using the same instrumental as the Beach Boys version, and that she got introduced to Jan Berry by Brian, and they were talking about that Jan had actually done the arrangement for the strings for the Surfer Moon.
In my interviews with Cheryl Pomeroy in particular, who was Sherry of Bob and Sherry, she talked a lot about how much Jan and Dean were around.
Yeah.
Like always kind of hanging out. Like, I think she told me that Bob Norberg told her that Jan and Dean were the ones who ran off with the master of the Big Beat.
Oh,
and,
really?
Yes. But we don't know if that's true. That sounds like something Jan might do. But who knows? I mean, Bob might have just told her that to tell her, because really what I like about the story is just that just the kind of the fellowship that was going on back in those early days, that they all were hanging out with one another, that they all enjoyed each other's company, that it wasn't this, it was less business and more friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And, the master probably got thrown in the trash, as heartbreaking as that might be, or the tape, or because again, if you think about it, when you're just jamming with a bunch of friends, even if you got the tape rolling, you're not, unless this is like, hey, we're doing this song and this is take so and so, you're not really thinking of it in terms of, oh, we got to keep this because it's going to be something someday. Yeah, I mean, it's just friends jamming together. And it'd be nice to think that somewhere there's a tape of it. But I don't know that they, or they could have just taped over it, because again, it was, hey, come on over to my pad. We'll shoot the shit. We'll hang out together and we'll jam. We'll just be in each other's company and jam. And I don't, those types, I think those are really great, formative, informed experiences for all of them, because Jan and Dean were first. And, clearly Surfin' was you take Jenny Lee or Baby Talk, or even Jan and Dean's version of Clementine, or, any of that, those bumps, man, they took those bumps and they stuck them on Surfin'. And instead of becoming competitive with one another, they became fast friends. I don't know. I mean, that's what I love so much about those early Jan and Dean and Beach Boys records. How much, just think about this. These days, I mean, the fact that Jan and Dean would participate with the Beach Boys in the studio. And then the Beach Boys, in kind, would play on their songs in the very beginning, their versions of Surfin' Safari and Surfin', Surf City. I mean, you know, they were friends, they were buddies, and it wasn't this. It wasn't really. It was less business and more camaraderie. And so when I listened to those early songs, if you listen to Jan and Dean Take Linda Surfin', the Beach Boys are on that record, that album, and that's what I love about that is, you know, they have this camaraderie, and I think it's a great example of what made them all better. I mean, I think Brian picked up from, you know, Jan was using two drummers at once, and he kind of told Brian about that, and Brian picked that up. Not that Brian, I don't think used two drummers at once, but he got from Jan. Jan had an amazing ability with arrangement, and with actually writing out arrangements, something Brian did not do. Brian heard arrangements in his head and was really that's where his gift is unmatched. That Brian had that capability to hear things in his head and then share them, you know, with all of us. I'm looking through I'm still trying to get our guest on. He's got some sort of technical issue, so I'm so sorry, because he was supposed to come on at 6:20, and here we are nearly 40 minutes later. So I'm so sorry about that. I'm hoping he'll hop on here. Let me just check something else just to see if not yet. Not yet, unfortunately.
All right, I've got. I'm going to take the video back for a second. I got one that's. This is for Mark Moore, who is one of the renowned Jan Berry experts in the world.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And has been a great contributor to ESQ as well. This is a Bell Sound acetate of. It's titled "When Summer Comes" by Jan and Dean. It's the song "Gonna Hustle You," and this is. Let me go this way a little bit. It's a very early version. This isn't the demo version with Brian singing the lead, but this is the first recorded version by Jan and Dean. So it starts out. It doesn't have the "Papa do ronde do ronde." It just goes.
Lee, hold off. Our guest is here.
Oh my goodness! Well, that's good timing.
Speaking of Durand, and we got another guest joining us too. Okay. Let me do something real quick while Dean is joining us.
All right, I'll finish the story while you're getting Dean on. So,
yeah. So, and remember, we have to take turns talking, so we're going to have to let Dean.
Oh, there's Dean.
He's on his phone. Okay. He's connecting his audio. Ladies and gentlemen. Boy, this was easy. He looks worn out just from the experience of trying to sign on. Oh man, I'm sorry. Hey Dean, how are you?
I think I'm okay. I don't know. God, what a process. Jesus. Okay. Floating reactions. What the hell is that?
That's a chat. That's like a live chat that's going on right now over on the side, and that's people reacting.
Oh, wonderful. Isn't that exciting?
Maybe they're out on their surfboard and they're actually floating. So it would be floating reactions.
No, that's tomorrow. They're going to float tomorrow, not today. Well, they're probably doing. Anyway, so I'll hit that and get rid of that. Okay.
Okay. So we've been, as you might imagine, we've been rambling on trying to stall. But so we're going to talk about what's happening tomorrow in just a little bit. But I was hoping that, I mean, what Lee and I were just talking about was the very early days. And I was wondering if you had anything that you might want to share with people watching that goes all the way back to either, did you visit Brian when he lived at Crenshaw Boulevard, when he lived with Bob Norberg, or maybe 108th Street? Those early times of just jamming together.
Yeah. Now, how'd you meet Brian? Do you remember the first time you met him?
They backed us up for a little high school hop that we were doing, and they were just our backup band. We did not have a backup band, you see, because we were full-time students, so we never really had a backup band. If we needed a band, we usually called the wrecking crew, and you'd have the best band in the world. So there were times when they weren't available, and this was one of those times. So we'd ask the local promoter who was doing the show, that part of the deal is you need to find us a band, and they need to learn a couple of our songs, and then we'll just play classics that the band knows and sing along. And it just so happened that this was kind of in the Beach Boys' backyard. It was close to Hawthorne. So the guy hired the Beach Boys, told them, if you want this job, you have to learn at least 3 to 4 Janet Dean records. So they did. And we all met we got probably this is a high school auditorium. So we probably got there hour early and had a little dressing room, and we all got together in that dressing room, did a quick little rehearsal, seemed to have it all under control, and seemed to be pretty damn cool and a lot of fun. They obviously did great vocals. We were looking for a band especially that could do vocals. We didn't care how they played. It needed to have great vocals because it was more or less a vocal group. And we didn't have monitors in those days. We didn't have any fancy crap. So as long as we had a vocal group singing 4-part harmonies, that's all we cared about. And that worked for us because they were so damn good. And from that point on, we did a bunch of dates. After that, probably 50 to 100 maybe, over the next couple of years.
So Dean, what would have been in the set list back then? Would it have been Baby Talk and Linda and some of those songs?
Yeah. Doo-wop. It was mostly doo-wop, so it was probably Baby Talk. That was probably it.
Who put the bop or something like that?
Linda was the big song because that had just been a hit. So that was the key one that we would do, was Linda. And probably just did Baby Talk. And then we just filled in around that to do something that was kind of fun, that we could all do together and didn't have to rehearse very much. So it must have been just those two. I think might have been, we had done kind of a cover record of We Go Together, which was kind of a doo-wop classic that we all knew. No, maybe we threw that in. I don't really remember. It was over in about half an hour. Our sets were a long set was probably 30 minutes. It's hard to make a set out of 3 songs, So we must have done Chuck Berry and any other doo-wop thing that we just happen to all know well enough to do it together.
And but you guys soon found yourself on stage, right? And that's because they backed you up. You guys would do Surfin' Safari.
Oh yeah, of course. We had heard those on the radio, so of course we did know Surfin' Safari. So but they had already done those. They would become also an opening act and do their own songs, and then we would be added in. So in our little rehearsal in whatever the dressing room that we had, we probably sussed out which songs, the classics that they were going to do, and then the classics that we do together. And as it turned out, they did their 2 hits, and an opening band was probably a 15-minute thing, maybe. And then either they introduced us or maybe there was an MC, don't remember, introduce us. So just adding in 2 extra guys, do our 3 hits, and then other fillers that we had basically at least talked about. I don't know if we actually rehearsed them. And we figured that was enough for a set. Now what happened, which was a great thing, it was a problem at the time because we got off stage, we ended our set and we all headed for the stairs. We walked down the stairs and the buyer stopped us at the bottom of the stairs and said, "You still owe me 4 minutes." 4 or 5, in that range, 4 or 5 minutes. Well, we didn't have any more songs. We'd gone through all the songs that we already did. So we told Brian, hey guys, come back. We owe them, for some reason, they really want this extra 5 minutes. So let's go back on and we have to do at least 2 songs. So Brian said, okay, well, we'll just do your 2 hits again. And that didn't make any sense. I said, we just did them. I said, the songs that we haven't done that we know together are your songs. Do Surfin' and Surfin' Safari. Because we did those, you did them like 25 minutes ago. Why not? And I remember Brian going, you're going to do our songs? You want to do our songs? I said, hell yeah, why not? Let's just do your songs as an encore. We know them well enough. We'll just add 2 vocals and be done with it. And they were just floored that we were going to do their songs. We were looking forward to doing their songs. Their songs are a lot more fun than ours. So we said, okay, let's do that and get the hell out of here. So we did Surfin' Safari. Now with 2 extra vocals, and all of those vocal parts really sounded good. And coming off the stage and back in the dressing room, we just kind of looked at one another. And me, and I'm sure Jan felt the same way. When we first started, we were a vocal band. That's what we wanted to do. Now here we are, back to the beginning when we used to do these things in Jan's garage with a bunch of other vocalists, and good vocalists at that. I said, man, we have something here. This is absolutely perfect, and let's do more of it. So it was good that there was a screw up. If we hadn't have done that screw up, I don't know whether or not we would have figured out that we could record together or not. I don't know. But anyway, it happened, and obviously it worked for the better, because now we were ready to do, because of Linda being a hit, we were given a budget to be able to do, a Linda LP. So now we have to scramble for, new songs. We didn't want to do a bunch of covers. And we thought, well, my gosh, maybe we'll go to that kid, Brian, and see if he will re-record Surfin' and Surfin' Safari, just like we did on stage, because it was so cool. Brian, being a songwriter, will make money on it. His publishing company will make money on it. They were already hits on the radio, so we're not messing up, anything for them. If anything else, we're giving them extra publicity, because old Jan and Dean fans will now hear about the Beach Boys. So we thought that would work for him, and we were pretty sure he wasn't going to turn that down. And of course he didn't. He was thrilled to get into the studio with us and to record with 2 extra vocals. So we were a big old vocal band. It was absolutely so damn much fun to be back in the vocal group. So,
Lee.
Lee, Jesus, you had all this time to think about this, man.
I mean, I know we had over 40 minutes, Lee. I mean, come on.
I know you were the warm up.
Yeah. No.
So Dean, sorry, Lee, but Dean, you were just talking about, going to Brian and working with Brian and that, and how much you enjoyed those voices. And I know that you guys really made an impression on Brian early on. What impression did Brian make on you that you, and other than the vocal, because they had a stack of harmonies? Other than that, what did you notice about Brian in the beginning that you and Jan hadn't been doing that kind of caught your eye?
Well, obviously he's so damn talented, but we all got along. And they were Jan and Dean fans, and even like if you listen to Surfing's got all those same doo-wop licks that we were doing. So it was a perfect marriage, nothing wrong about it. All of them were great guys. We seemed to get along immediately. So it was easy to just say, let's do this more.
Mm-hmm. And so Ronnie Dario, who's going to be coming up and joining us, he just sent a question. How did you come up with the idea? Well, and I kind of already know the answer to this because we've talked about it before.
Oh, well, then you answer it.
I wasn't there, though. I wasn't there. You and Jen, where did the idea come from to take, sidewalk surfing? I knew there wasn't a skateboard song, so that was kind of the idea for that. But how did the two of you decide to use the melody from Catch a Wave?
Oh, wait, I should actually back up to Linda, because we knew that we were going, of course, we had to do Linda, obviously, which was a doo-wop song, and it was kind of Four Season-ish. And we were kind of wanting to move a little bit in a different direction than being Four Season-ish. So we were going to do the Linda album. We already talked to Brian. We'll do Surfing and the Surfing Safari. And of course, we said to Brian, what other surf songs do you have? Because so far, we have only 3 songs to put on this album. And there weren't any. And well, he said, well, he was working on 2 surf songs. So we thought, well, at least we have 2 that we already know and can record. So let's go ahead and call this record Jan and Dean Take Linda Surfing. Now we've established that that's the direction we're going to go in, and not more, 4 seasons. And so it's going to be the surf culture, the Southern California beach culture, which, we were all about that, and had been going to the beach and in that lifestyle for years. So that was an easy place to just kind of move into. But once again, we can't make an album out of 3 songs. So we found other fillers to throw in there, unfortunately. But at the same time, we said, Brian, what else you got that we could put on this album? And he said, well, I'm working on 2 other surf songs, and I'm only going to use one of them. And at the moment, I think the one I'm more inclined to finish and do is this one. Do you want to hear it on the piano? So he's sitting at the piano and he plays Surfing USA. We go, holy crap. Can we have that? He said, no. So we said, well, what's the other song? He said, it's called Surf City. And I haven't really finished it. I got maybe half of it done. And I'm more inclined to do Surfing USA and then just I'll probably never get around to this other song, Surf City. So I said, oh, okay, we'll take it. But we still like Surfing USA better. But we'll take Surf City and we'll finish it. He said, fine, I'm done with it. I'm not going to finish it. And if you finish it, we can share some of the writing stuff together. And we thought we could probably get publishing for him, but we weren't able to do that. But he didn't care as a songwriter. At the time, it was just more exposure for Brian. So we didn't get Surf City finished enough to put it on the Linda album. So we just got Linda album finished and out, and then concentrated on Surf City. And as you know, it came out pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sure did.
Yeah, I guess that's what's called an understatement. But
yeah. So then what?
Then what? Yeah, that's always a good question. Then what?
Yeah, then what? Well, no. So then you get to Sidewalk Surfing. There's not a song about skateboarding. So you and Jan did decide to do that. But what of all songs? I mean, there was a lot of great songs that the Beach Boys had recorded by that point. What was it about Catch a Wave that ended up being the song that ended up being the base for that track?
Well, we all tried to write a skateboarding song, and I'm sure we asked our friends Roger Christian and even Barry and Sloan and others to see if we could come up with a skateboarding song, and we just couldn't do it. We just couldn't find a melody that we particularly liked. I don't know if it was Brian that suggested it, but it was, Catch a Wave was not a single. It was on an album. Most, unless you're a Beach Boy fan, you probably never heard the song, and because it wasn't on the radio, stuck on an LP. So he said, Brian, it's okay to use the melody for that, and then just make it a skateboard song. Just change the words. He was okay with that. He was going to get half the writing credit, or at least a third of the writing credit. And that's what we did. Already a song that had the melody. Melody is so important. And he was so good at, there it is. Never even seen that. From Czechoslovakia?
I'm gonna cut my voice in so the camera switches to me real quick so I can show our viewers this. But this is
that's cute.
Yep, and I'm sure that was Murray's doing to say, oh, okay.
That would be the
Sia tunes,
sheet music.
Yep.
Because in the old days, sheet music was also a viable component of the song, whatever the song was. Sheet music sold a lot of copies in those days, so it was good business to actually have sheet music done. So Murray would have thought of that, because he finally realized that if Jan and Dean are going to do these songs by his son, that he co-owns a publishing company, why the hell not? He's going to get paid twice. He got paid for the Catch a Wave on the LP, and now here's the single, and that single will probably be on an album of ours, so they're going to get double pay from the single and from the LP. Well, it's good business.
Yeah, and if Murray's doing it, then he can put words and music, Brian Wilson and Roger Christian, and not mention you guys.
Yeah. Yep. Well, he was quite the businessman. Yes. Okay. I mean, he sold that publishing for $700,000 when it's worth $10 million. But what the hell? He was close. Just didn't get the decimal point right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Off.
Dave, did you want me to show the other thing that I was?
Yeah. Please show that to him.
Okay. All right. This is a Bell Sound acetate. This actually was Don Kirshner's personal copy of "Gonna Hustle You," but they put the name When Summer Comes on there instead of Gonna Hustle You. But it's the first version that you guys cut.
Wow, that's a pretty neat one.
Yeah,
I've never seen that. And off that demo, you know, that was, of course, also given to the record company. And the record company, they were the ones to look at that. And even though we didn't put the word hustle in the title, they said it's in the song, and that's inappropriate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because that does say When Summer Comes. It doesn't say Gonna Hustle You on the acetate.
Oh, no, you can't say that on the radio. You say that on the radio, and you get bleeped and fined. And I remember and Jan and I went home and even asked our fathers, hey, what is this deal about the word hustle? I mean, and it was a lot different for us than it was for them. And my dad said, oh, no, that son, that's kind of a suggestive word. Oh, Dad, you know, we're making records for girls, and that's the whole idea, is to get them all excited, you know, about stuff. And, you know, it's part of the marketing.
So then you changed it to Get a Chance with You, and the record company still didn't like it.
Oh, no. So we just changed it all together.
Yeah.
I never really liked the changes. Later, 4 or 5 years later, I used the same track and redid it along with Bruce Johnston. Helped re-record that stuff and put it back in the original form just to do it. By that time, the execs, the old farts, they were gone, and now the record companies are starting to be run by younger people in executive positions. And the younger people thought, you know, this is a great song, and it's so Brian-esque, Gonna Hustle You, that we do have to re-record it. So that's why I did it.
Yeah, that was a great version.
So Dean, tell us about, you know, Brian, obviously you were a good friend of Brian's in those early days and through his life. Tell us a little bit about Tomorrow. Tell us about Tomorrow and, you know, your desire to kind of celebrate Brian.
Well, it just seemed like the most natural thing to do was, you know, he was probably going to have maybe other events, memorials and all that, but man, his music was so tied to the beach lifestyle and certainly to surfing. And it's International Surfing Day just happens to be tomorrow anyway. So I'm on the marketing committee for Huntington Beach, where we market internationally to get tourism here. And so a lot of our stuff does go international. So we knew that there would be coverage over that being the International Surf Day. And it just so happened that Brian passed away last week. And usually any surf royalty that passes away, there is this event called a paddle out. And we thought, God, man, this is perfect timing. The folks will all be there for the International Surfing Day anyway. Let's just piggyback on top of that and then throw in this paddle out, which the guys in the surfboards are going to be there anyway. Let's just maybe even make it bigger. Now there's all sorts of people going to show up that are, you know, Beach Boy, Brian Wilson fans, and they'll be joining the other folks that were there just for the day, the surfing day. So why not honor him with that? We can play the music. We have a sound system that will be able to be heard kind of all around the whole surrounding area, right next to our pier. And these guys will all paddle out, and the background will be the music. And we got drones that are going to take some really nice photography of it all. And we'll celebrate his life and his music tomorrow at the beach where it should be. I asked 3 ex-wives to come of Beach Boys, and Marilyn couldn't make it, but I have Annie Wilson Cargus is her new name. So Annie's going to come, who is Carl's wife, and Dennis's first wife, Barbara. So I actually have a couple of Wilsons there, ex-wives, but everybody has ex-wives except me, of course. How about you, David? Oh, that's right. I don't know about Lee, but
no, still a number 1.
Oh, good. Me too.
Ouch.
Well, okay. Well,
Yeah,
we don't have to talk about it.
The shoe fits, right?
It does.
Wow. Okay, I'll be back in a minute. I have to recover.
That's your problem.
So Dean, had you been in contact with Brian lately? Or did you had the chance to see him over the last year or so?
I saw him play live about maybe 2 years ago, 2.5. And I wanted to see him. One of my old bandmates was still playing with him, Gary Griffin.
Yeah.
Gary was in the band, and so I had Gary's cell phone number. And when the concert was over, I texted or called Gary, and I said, so you guys are backstage. Can I come back and say hello to everybody? And Gary said, oh, no. Brian still is worried about COVID, so he doesn't want anybody back that is just coming from being with an audience. No, we were sitting in an audience, so could have been some COVID floating around. So I said, okay, Gary, I'll wave at you as you're getting on the bus. Other than that, the only time I really was on stage with Brian was their 50-year anniversary stuff. And I did at least a show with them, and Brian was standing right next to me. So that was kind of cool. His house, for years, especially when Landy was around, I got cut off from Brian. Marilyn always invited me to the house. She said Brian loved, to visit with me, and he considered me one of the brothers, which was a nice compliment. But as soon as Landy came around, I kind of lost that connection. And once he was divorced from Marilyn, I didn't really get that kind of access to him anymore. Now, I'd say maybe within the last year, I know that his band members were going up, and Probin especially was visiting. I said, I'll come with you sometime. And we just could never get it together. Then I thought I would just go up on my own. By this time, I was seeing pictures of him, and he was obviously didn't even know who was there or who was talking to him. I just didn't want to have that memory.
Yeah.
So at that point, I just thought, well, I'm not going to do that and ruin it. Myself, and he's not going to know the difference anyway.
Yeah.
So it's too bad. In my mind, he had a very, very rough life and kind of a sad life, but he left us with such great music that he's got that going for him, and God bless him for that. So we'll remember him from his music and not really think about, the tough life that he actually did have.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Dean, thank you.
Sorry for that screw up. I have a very old computer. It's an old, but it's an Apple. But the OS system is old because I do, like you, I got Photoshop.
Oh yeah.
And my Photoshop is more compatible with this OS system. and I refuse to, to deal with Adobe.
Is the computer older than you, though?
Let me ask you. Hey, computer, it's not talking.
Does it have a crank on the side and a horn that you know?
Oh, you're not. You guys don't have that? Oh shit!
Well, you've got a gold one.
No, there is a gold one. I think, or kind of gold. I didn't buy that one because I didn't need it.
I'm talking about your Grammy.
Oh, the Grammy.
Well,
It's gone. I don't even know where swear to God, I sold the Grammy to somebody because my daughters sat on it and broke it.
Oh.
It was in pieces anyway, and I duct taped it all back together again.
Well, see, you can, anybody you're in a conversation with, you can say, now, how many Grammys do you have? That's what my son does to me on hole-in-ones. He's got, we're both golfers. He's got 2 hole-in-ones. So anytime I'm trying to sass him, like, now, how many hole-in-ones do you have, Dad?
Well, now I don't have any. So I went from 1 to none.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember who the guy gave me. I didn't really want any money for it, but the guy gave me enough money. He said, well, find out how much it costs to replace the Grammy. And so I found out, and he said something like $500 or $600. And I told the guy, well, it's $500. And he gave me 500. And then I went to Dairy Queen.
There you go.
There you go.
I didn't really it was something I wasn't proud of. I didn't really like it. And when I became the art director and then going to be on the committee for the following year, you automatically get that if you get a Grammy. I told all the art directors in the meeting, first meeting that I had with them, I held up my album cover and I said, this should not have won a Grammy. And shouldn't have been nominated for anything. And any one of you that voted for this, you don't understand what we're supposed to be doing, and that's enhancing the career of the musical artist that we're designing this album cover for, and putting a chicken on the front of an album cover without much mention about the group. I don't know, that was wrong to me, that the poor group didn't get their picture on the front. They'd worked very hard, putting their music together, and they didn't even get a picture on the back. I think you had to open it up to see what the group about. And especially if you're a new artist, you need to have your pictures up front center and not inside somewhere. Because you look at that cover, you don't know, is this rock and roll? Is this heavy metal? Obviously not heavy metal. It probably, you're going to have to guess that maybe it's country because there's a chicken, I don't know, farm chicken. Or is this jazz? Nobody knows. So it was stupid. Was it clever? Yes, it was clever. I'll give you that. For something else, not an album cover, it didn't make any sense at all. So from that point on, they kind of did understand what they were supposed to be doing and not trying to win Grammys over some cool art. So it's only cool if it works for the artist. If it doesn't work for the artist, it doesn't make any sense at all. And that's my rant. I'll stick to it.
Well, it was a stroke of genius for you to realize, the Olympic logo has 5 rings in it, and there's 5 Beach Boys. So.
I think that was Mike Love's idea, actually.
Really?
I was good at listening to artists. That's how I built my business. I said, you, the artist, know what you're doing most of the time. There were some artists that didn't. But you have something in mind. This is your cover with your picture on it. You want to be proud of it for the rest of your life. So I'm doing something that you like. Now, maybe the other Beach Boys, I don't know. They showed up for a photo session. They knew what we were doing. I think they appreciated the idea. maybe they didn't even know that was Mike's idea. I mean, we didn't telegraph that. Maybe we did that on purpose. But it just organically showed up. No, that was Mike's idea to do the circles and put each person's picture in there, and it was cool. Very good idea.
Yeah. Well, Dean, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And anybody in the Huntington Beach, starts at 10 a.m. tomorrow, right? The paddle out?
Yep.
At 10 a.m. So if anybody's out in Surf City area, Huntington Beach area, and you want to go and witness the really special event when they're honoring Brian and his great legacy, be at Huntington Beach tomorrow. All right. Thank you.
You can see some ex-wives.
All right. Thanks.
I'll see you guys.
All right.
Sorry about the screw up.
No, that's okay. Don't worry about that.
Someday.
All right.
Okay.
Yep.
Bye.
Dennis Dyken, how are you?
Hey, Dave, I'm doing really, really well, all things considered. Doing pretty good.
Yeah. So, so what was your response and your reaction when you heard the news last week?
Well, it was, I guess, not surprised, but yet shock. Not surprised because we knew Brian wasn't doing all that great, although I hadn't heard any updates in a while, but we knew he was old and he had some issues. And I guess in the back of our minds, we all knew that it could happen at any time soon. And it came at me. I was driving with my wife and a friend kept calling, and I usually don't pick up when I'm driving. And he just kept ringing. So I said, I gotta take this call. There must be something important. So, it was just, I guess, a bit of disbelief too, like whenever a family member passes or anybody that's close to you, it's just, it does hit you like a ton of bricks. It's heavy duty,
Mm-hmm. And when you saw it still seems to be going on, when you saw the overall reaction worldwide, what did you think of that? How did that?
It's heartwarming, isn't it? I mean, I guess we've lost a lot of musicians and figures that mean a lot to us over the last 5-10 years, and there's always some kind of outpouring of grief and love, and but this one's a lot bigger, I think, than anything I've seen in a long time. So it's heartening to know that as we knew, that there's so much love for Brian out there and so much respect, and how his music has really touched the hearts of so many people. So it was a little bit of a balm, to see that much respect for Brian at this time.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, it was. Lee and I were talking about that earlier. For me, I didn't have a stunned feeling at all, because when he passed, Lee and I were talking that day, and that Wednesday, and I was talking about the Mount Rushmore of music icons, and kind of feeling like, okay, I don't know who you're going to put on the Mount Rushmore, how many heads that's going to be, but I think Brian's is up above the rest of them.
Yep. I agree. And in all the messages we've seen out there on all the platforms, it's nice to see musicians, how they were influenced and inspired. Other great musicians by Brian's life and his art, Brian's music spoke to the everyman, but he also really got to the hearts of other great musicians, as we know. And I do think that influence and that inspiration is going to live on for generations, And it's great. It's also great to see so many younger people expressing deep knowledge of Brian and the Beach Boys music, and their sorrow in Brian's passing. So that's heartening too, to know that the music is eternal. It's going to go on, and it's nice to see that the evidence of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, Dennis, and my son's a hip hop fan, and he was forwarding all of the different hip hop artists that said, this is, Brian was a big influence on me and my music and me growing up and all that. And so it really, like you said, it just spans all genres.
That's interesting to hear. And by the way, it's good to see you, Lee. It's been a while.
It has, Dennis. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's cool to hear, because don't necessarily think of his influence in those terms with those kind of artists. So it's great. It's great to know. Yeah. And the music is so rich and it's sophisticated in a beautiful way. What I've been saying for a while now, and it rings true, or it's a good time to express this. I am really grateful not only to have been alive and grown up with this at the same time when the Beach Boys were making their records and Brian was doing his thing. I mean, I'm grateful, that to have that in all of my years. And as soon as the Beach Boys hit, they were a part of my life. I'm grateful for that, but I'm also grateful that Brian had this amazing gift doing its thing. I mean, I'm grateful, that to have that in all of my years. Hey, Ronnie. Beach Boys hit. They were getting a little.
Sorry to interrupt you, Dennis. We've just been joined by Rob Bonfilio and Ronnie Dario. So welcome, gentlemen.
Hey guys.
Doing its thing.
Hi, Dennis. Hey, Ronnie.
Hello there.
I think somebody's got their audio.
Yeah, someone's got their.
They were getting a little.
Dennis, we've just been joined by Rob Bonfilio and Ronnie Dario. So if you turn off your YouTube volume.
Hi, Dennis. Hey, Ronnie.
Hello there.
Hi.
I think somebody's got their audio.
Yeah, someone's got their. Okay, I think Ronnie is working on turning off the YouTube. I think that's what the feedback was. Okay. So sorry, Dennis.
That's cool. No, what I was going to say is I'm really glad that we all know Brian had this immense gift, and he could have.
That's I think.
Hello.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Go ahead.
He could have a person with that much talent and a gift like he had could have chosen any number of routes to express it. It could have gone down a jazz route or a classical, or just more as a composer. But man, I'm so glad that he grew up in the 50s and latched onto rock and roll and was able to channel all that energy into a rock style that spoke to us and that we could dig as rock and roll fans, and it maybe not even knowing how much sophistication we were getting from him, but it was coming to us in a way that was palatable to us as kids, and I'm grateful that it is given to us in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and back then you had a lot of two-part harmony. You had the Everly Brothers and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then for him to be able to latch on to the Four Freshmen and the high-lows and, develop that into 4- and 5-part harmony.
Yeah. But he always throughout his career, he maintained his rock and roll heart. Even no matter how sophisticated he was getting, I'm trying to think of some good examples. He always would hearken back to bits and pieces from 50s and early 60s records. I had some good examples recently I was thinking of, but no matter how far out he got, he always somehow also invested his favorite stuff from that era. Maybe as we talk, I'll think of some examples. Okay. But
Rob, if you would jump in, Rob's got a short window, so I wanted to get him in here too. Rob, you're if anyone's really close to this situation, it would you certainly are. But I'd like to maybe before I get into a family question, I would like to just kind of ask how, when you were growing up and you got into music and everything, how Brian, what you recall hearing first when you were younger and how that affected you and what drew you to that music. Because just as a quick thing, your song Golden State is such an amazing song, and I almost feel like it's a tribute to Brian and his great, the same type of imagery that he conjured up with the Beach Boys back in the day.
Interesting. Well, thanks. You can hear me? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was definitely a subconscious tribute, if anything. But to go back to your first point, I think my first awareness of the Beach Boys was my true hippie uncle, who was a true hippie. And I remember going up to his bedroom when he was still living with my grandfather. He was the youngest of three brothers. Funny enough, my dad was the oldest brother. And I remember going up there and seeing that Capitol Records swirl. He had something on the turntable. It was a Beach Boys record. I don't remember what it was, but I just remember that swirl. And so I didn't really come to truly love and understand the melancholy of Brian and the songs he wrote until I discovered Pet Sounds, which was in my early 20s. So I was much older, much farther down the road, mature wise, when I came to really get it. Everything else prior to that was the surf songs and the car songs and whatever. I come from Philly, so I didn't really, I don't know, it didn't really hit me until much later.
Mm-hmm. Dennis, when did it hit you?
In spring of '63.
Wow. Okay.
Well, I remember hearing Surfin' Safari in late '62 or whenever it came out, and I liked it, but Surfin' USA and Shutdown in a big way. I really latched onto those immediately, and there were so many elements of that record that hooked me. It's interesting on Surfing USA. Of course, the falsetto was a standout thing, but I guess it was David Mark's rhythm guitar that was trebled up. Really hooked me. That was an interesting, and of course the 4/4 on the kick drum. But Shutdown too was it was so tough, such a tough record, and it hooked me. And I was there moving forward since that time. Yeah.
No, I already know the answer, but I want to ask him for everyone who's tuned in. Ronnie, tell us about when they got a hold of you, when Brian and the Beach Boys got a hold of you.
Yeah, I missed the Beach Boys during my childhood, which is funny because I was so enamored by the British invasion that I can't believe to this day that, I mean, I knew their hits in the background, but I knew more about the Four Seasons and Jen and Dean. And it wasn't until Surf's Up that I was listening to WPLJ in New York, and I heard Surf's Up, and I didn't know who it was, but I was intrigued by the chromatic melody. The grass was raised, the fire rose, the fullness of the wine did best. That part, I was going, this is insane. Who's doing this? I didn't know anything, about the Beach Boys, really. And then I waited to hear at the end for the DJ, and he said the Beach Boys. And I went, wow, the Beach Boys. That's interesting. And then next week, I heard I Get Around on the radio, and I heard it in a whole new way. I didn't just hear it as a rock and roll hit or car song. I listened to the chorus, and I thought that the melody was beautiful. The harmonies were great. It had such a good sound. And I was into the verse part, of course, with Mike singing, the rock part of it. But when Brian started coming in with that falsetto, I said, okay, I got to check these guys out. So it was 1970, so the Beatles had broken up. So I spent the Beach Boys got me through the 70s.
Hmm.
I searched all the stores, Corvettes, anywhere, because the Beach Boys albums were all out of print.
Mhm.
And so I started. It was fun actually. I started eventually got all their albums, and I was sitting listening to one called The Beach Boys Close Up, which was a Capitol series, which was a combination of Surfing USA and All Summer Long. And I was listening to All Summer Long, and I was listening to the Girls on the Beach, and I was absolutely freaking out. You know, not only did he change keys in the first and second verse as a natural part of the song, but then in the third verse, he changed keys twice. And I was just flipping out. And then I just became a fanatic. And I still can't believe that I missed them when I was a kid, because I was a musician when I was a kid. I can remember once my cousins who were really into the Beach Boys, I went to visit them, Johnny and Randy. And I didn't know them that well, but we were getting more acquainted. And so we were talking about music. And I said, so who were you into? And they said the Beach Boys. And I went, the Beach Boys? The Beach Boys? Are you kidding me? You know, I had that stupid hip, unhip attitude.
Mm.
You
Same
know,
here.
yeah,
Yeah, same here.
yeah, those guys in the striped shirts and all that stuff. Anyway, uh, I soon realized that they were hipper than anybody. The hell with the Doors and all these people, please. And then I read California Saga by David Leaf, and I started going, wow, it put me in such a creative mood. Yeah, I mean, um, and my kids love them. And, when I talk to my kids about the Beach Boys, it's like talking to somebody my age. They know everything. I mean, my son Brian, he used to do, and Darian told me that he did this too. When Brian was young, he used to go on my computer and try to arrange Smile in the
Oh,
way that he thought it should have been.
Mhm.
yes.
You know, uh,
Who here has done that?
I used to set up their iTunes with Beach Boys and Beatles and Badfinger and all that stuff, and Stones, and they would go through it. Um, it was Michael who actually texted me when Brian died, and I went, and I just kind of felt like, oh yeah, couldn't have him forever. I knew he was old and not well, and it's one of those things that boy, you're just waiting for it. You're dreading it. It's same with Paul McCartney. You go, oh my God, when that day happens. And a lot of them have a lot of my favorites. Brian, Burt Bacharach, although he was very old, and Gary Brooker of Procol Harum, who I loved, and got to know him a little bit. Yeah, so it's been a heart-wrenching
Mhm.
year. You know,
Yeah, yeah. Um, I'm going to bounce around.
people that I don't know personally, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Does.
Well,
But
that's what I'm going to bounce around, Ronnie. That's yeah, yeah. I think we all kind of are in that place where we've seen recent photos of Brian. But Rob, you and April, you and I had seen each other in early April, and you had shared with me that you were going to go and visit Brian and play music with him. Now, very few people, I know that the guys went and did that a lot.
Mhm.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about that and what your experience of what Brian got from those instances where he was with people who loved him and would perform music for him?
Yeah, I mean, it was really something just to we would sing songs, and sometimes we would see a spark in his eye, and he would sing along, or we would try to get him to just engage. Because some days he was just not out. He was just not feeling great, and didn't want to. And other days he was funny and as communicative as possible, and it just felt like going in there and giving him some medicine of love, just trying to make him happy, or make him feel something, or make him engage, or perhaps light that, that find that missing synapse in his brain, that a memory from way far back or something. And every time we went there, it was a little different, some days we'd have him singing all of Surfing USA, and other times he would just sit there and maybe just kind of gaze off in the distance, or maybe a little smile here or there, and then said, and then he'd be like, Albert, and that was his cue to get out of there. So it was cathartic for everybody, I think, especially for us as the band, and seeing how dramatically he had declined health-wise in the last couple of years. We were concerned about him. We wanted to reach out and let him know that we were there to spread more love,
Yeah.
the love he spread his whole life.
Yeah. And Ronnie, your sons, Michael and Brian, were at Brian's birthday party last year, and Rob, you were there. And just so if anybody's watching is not sure who Ronnie's sons, Brian and Michael, are, they're the Lemon Twigs. So just in case you didn't know. But so you were there at Brian's birthday party last year, and in Carney, of course, she was the whole band was taking requests from Brian. What stands out to you about, just to your point of what you were just talking about, Brian's kind of language was music.
Yeah.
So what stands out from you, that birthday bash from last year?
I loved it when Carney sang "Be My Baby." Brian, that was a really touching moment. And what else did we do? Brian and Michael joined us, and they were great, and we sang. I'm trying to think what we sang.
It was really funny.
Yeah,
I did a Beatles song.
I was really proud of this, because Brian requested a very obscure song by the folk.
Oh yeah. This could be the night.
Yeah, that was the title song on that Phil Spector.
Yeah.
Show. Yeah, and,
right,
and Michael knew the words.
Yes, he did. Of course.
I was going, all right.
Not unexpected. Yeah, no.
You guys played with him. Yeah.
Sure did. Yeah, that was a treat. That was a real treat. It was great to be able to make the introduction, Brian and Michael to Brian.
And by the way, you Rob, and all his family and friends, and Darian, I mean, I don't think that Brian could have done what he did the past decades without all of you guys' support and your musicianship. And seeing Darian on the laptop in that Smile video, really trying to get the Smile thing together. I mean, everybody was such fans as well as musicians, and loved him, and I don't think he could have done it without you.
Much credit to those guys, for sure. I'm late. I came much later, but much credit to those guys. I do have a side note story, very interesting. In about 2006, maybe, this was the day after Eugene Landy passed away. Brian came over our house, and Carney and I recorded a couple of songs there. And I never, they've never been released in any way, shape, or form, but we may do something.
Can you tell us the titles?
Sure. We did "My Secret Love," the old Doris Day standard.
Okay. Wow.
We did "Do Ron Ron." This was Brian at the helm. It was like, what do you want to do, Brian? Whatever you want to do, do it. Give me a keyboard. Can you give me a piano sound? Give me like a tack piano. Okay, Brian. Oh, you got a drum set? And it was that quick. Bam, bam, bam. He was laying it down. And the results are kind of very Love You-ish.
Oh, cool.
It's pretty cool.
What was the third song?
I I don't know that we ever got to a third song, truthfully.
Oh, okay,
We had
okay.
sessions. I was just able to recover some of the sessions. They were in an old hard drive, and the files were almost, I almost lost them. So there is a session there that says Brian number 3, and I haven't been able to open that yet. So I don't know that we ever did anything.
Okay.
But you know, we did that for a while, and then for whatever reason, the kibosh was put on that, and he never came back again. So
But what a like personal treasure though. What a even if nothing ever comes of it, what a beautiful memento for you and Carney.
Absolutely. And he's, you know, he sounds happy, and he was just himself, and it was a lovely moment.
So it sounds as though that was a moment of release for Brian.
Absolutely.
Because it was following that day.
Yeah.
Almost like
it was the day he felt free.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was intense. It was intense.
Dennis, did you ever I know you've done a lot of things with Beach Boys people through the years, and you even traveled to Billy Hinchy and Robert Lamb, and played with them. Did you ever get to play with Brian?
I did one time. It's funny because Jeff Foskett tried a lot to get me to sit in, even just to play tambourine. But truth be told, he had to get permission from Melinda, to have anybody sit in. And actually, Jeff was trying to get me in Brian's band. Now it can be told for the first tour, and it just political reasons it didn't work out. We were talking itinerary, and we were getting for it to be real, but it didn't happen. But anyway, there was one show at Red Bank at the Count Basie Theater. My wife and I went, and I almost didn't go that day. I said, "Oh man, I'm kind of tired, but I want to see my pals and I want to see Brian." And so we go to the sound check, and Jeff Foskett walks up to me after sound check. He says, "You're going to sit in tonight, right?" I said, "Okay." And Bruce Springsteen was there as well. And so I played on the encore, played on Fun, Fun, Fun and Surfing USA. And then I got to stand on stage and sing with everybody on the finale of Love and Mercy.
Oh.
That was really so special and so meaningful and so beautiful. And Brian seemed happy. And I can't say how much that moment meant to me. And I'll always be thankful to Jeff for that. And to Brian.
Well, I'm hearing this is what's heartening to me, is I'm hearing these examples that everybody is sharing are these really sweet moments where Brian's happy.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of standing out to me. Ronnie, did you have a chance to I don't know, did you, I know you've done recordings with Steve Kalinich, but did you have an opportunity to meet Brian or do anything musical with Brian?
No, I did meet Brian, but it was more a fan situation.
Okay.
After the Good Vibration show on Broadway, Brian happened to be there that night, so we waited by the stage door, and I shook his hand and got his autograph. But that wasn't, it wasn't like really meeting him. Well, it was meeting him, but we weren't pals.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But luckily, my kids got to meet him. Thanks to
thanks to
Arian.
Yes. Well, Darian is such a what's the right word? A champion, I guess, for lack of a better word. Darian is such a champion of that music and that man.
Sweetest person in the world.
I mean, Lee and I were talking about it when we first started earlier. Was just how fortunate for Brian that he had such true caring, loving devotees from the very beginning with Darian and Nick. Mm-hmm. People who just really genuinely loved the music, and then when they got to meet the guy, they loved the man. And that, I think, really carried itself. I think that really speaks to how Brian enjoyed himself touring, because if you don't have the right people with you, it can be a different, you want to. John Parks has joined us.
Hi, how you doing, Dave?
Came into the Beach Boys world way back in the day. He became a friend in high school, and then went on to become the Beach Boys manager. But guys, just be patient with me. Rob's got to hop in about 7 minutes, so I just want to go back to Rob.
Yeah, go ahead.
Rob, if you've been around your family. If this is too personal, just we'll skip. But you've been around family and the loss of Brian now for almost a week. And what can you share with us in terms? How, I guess first question is, how has the family felt about the incredible, astonishing outpouring of worldwide love for Brian?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I can only speak, on a little bit of the periphery of that, but it's incredible the way, so many people have come forth and talked about all these aspects of his life, and people have reached out to me I haven't heard from in years, and it's really an amazing thing. And it's been a lot of highs and lows. Carney's been going, she's all right one day and she's not all right the next day. So, it's a loss. It's a loss of her father as far, as well as a musical icon and all that stuff. So it's bittersweet, but it's heartwarming to see all these beautiful tributes.
Yeah. And is there any well, thank you for sharing that. Is there anything that for you personally, that not Carney or anything, but just from you personally, musically, how you feel, what would you credit Brian with that you think is something that deserves, for lack of a better way of putting it, a talking point? The guy's legacy is so many components, but if there's anything that comes to mind for you that you would want to make sure people don't forget about Brian.
Wow. I mean, there's books written about that.
Yeah.
hard to sum up in a talking point. There you go, right? His incredible depth of harmony and the way that he's able to translate complex harmony into emotion and feelings and listening to Pet Sounds, just personally for me, it touches a place that's not even communicable. It's either you get it or you don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
When I got it hard, and I felt it. It's deep, and that's that combination of whatever it is, the innocence and the complex harmonies and the earnestness. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. Well, I want to welcome also Stevie Kalinich. Stevie, thank you for joining us. I feel like I got the whole team here. Stevie's worked with Ronnie and he's worked with Rob. We're so glad you're here, Stevie. Rob's just got a few more minutes and then he has to go. So apologize, guys. Rob, is there anything else that you can think of that you want to add that,
Wow. I love Stevie. Hi, Stevie.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say is that I live in a surreal world that I was even privy to witness the man at all. So I'm grateful to have played my tiny little fraction of a piece of the story here,
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, well then, if you do me a favor, and everybody can take their time to express this to Rob, would you please send my heartfelt, supportive love to everyone?
I sure will.
Yep.
Would you like to say something to Rob to pass on?
No, Rob, I really appreciate you joining, and I just give Marilyn, Daniel my love, Carney, Wendy.
Sure.
And when the time's right, I'll reach back out to Daniel on some things that we were working on. That I sent you some files to the Dropbox, so we'll.
Oh yes, yes you have. Sorry, I will get to them. Sorry.
No, when the time's right,
Lee, you're going to have to wait. He's got a number 3 hard drive that he's got to get to. All right, Rob. Dennis, I mean, any?
Rob, I echo all those things, and
Oh,
I thank you for your contributions to Brian's work and keeping the summer alive in that way. My regards and love to the family, and I look forward to making some music with you again soon.
absolutely. It was a thrill being able to record with you, Dennis.
Likewise.
Ronnie?
Everything that Dennis just said.
Oh, I love you, Ronnie.
Oh, thank you.
You're a good man.
You know, not only Brian's music, but just watching Brian's interviews is like just great. I watch him over and over again, man. I mean, he was so funny. I mean, what he wanted to be and what he wasn't trying to be. Just such a great character. You know, I mean, I know he was very sad, but it's part of the thing that makes you love the guy.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Rob.
Hey,
Much love
take
to
care, my friend.
all. All right, you too. Thanks.
Sending love to you guys.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye. Well, that was great. That was lovely. I mean, and how cool is it that he's got? I hope he gets that hard drive rescued.
Yeah. Really.
That's pretty phenomenal. Well, John, welcome, and we're running behind. John Dean Torrance joined us first, but he was like 45 minutes late. So we've been my in quote plan of staggering everybody kind of went out the window.
Well, it's kind of like being at the doctor's office, and if the first appointment goes late, then it's just a domino effect after that.
Yes. So
I thought about a little bit of Dean's thing when you were talking to him when I checked in early.
okay, yeah.
I live in Dana Point near Doheny, and he lives about 15 miles down the street at Huntington Beach. And you guys talked about a paddle out that they're going to have for Brian. And I heard there's going to be a minimum of 1,000 people.
Wow.
Or to Huntington.
Surf. That's great. Are you going to go? Because you still surf.
I know I do. And I'm not sure that I want to be in Huntington Beach with 1,000. But my wife has suggested that I do it. I may go do it. So we'll see.
Oh, you got to go do it. John, I know you probably don't want to deal with the crowd, but
well,
that's that be?
I've been to paddle outs, and that's a huge. I've never seen a paddle out with that many people. Even at Duke Hoku's, I don't think they had that many.
1,000.
Wow.
And
I
they
mean,
bring flowers and leis and set them in the water and say a prayer for Brian, and that'll be great.
now I can't imagine. I'm sure it would be over 1,000 who are actually on the beach. I can't imagine 1,000 actual surfers going out into the ocean though.
I can't either.
Isn't that? But doesn't that speak? Why we're here. Doesn't that speak to Brian's incredible, what he's left us with, that he touched all our lives in such a way.
Well, somebody was. I guess that was Carney's husband that you were talking to.
Say that again.
Was that Carney's husband that you were talking?
Yes, Rob Bonfilio, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he, talked about a lot of people reaching out. I was playing golf when I heard about it. I was in the middle of a golf game, and I heard my phone ring about 5 times. So I finally went and picked it up and saw what happened.
Mm-hmm.
It was, to me, it was just a shock. I've been to the whole family's funeral, and Brian was the last one in the family. I was at Murray's, and then Audrey's and Carl's and Dennis's, or Dennis was before Dennis's, and now Brian's. So it was, for me, the biggest shock to me was the loss of thinking that there wasn't going to be more music from Brian.
Oh, yeah.
But honestly, after a couple of days of that, my thinking changed a little bit. My thinking changed to, well, Brian went to heaven, and Dennis and Carl and all Brian's friends that have passed were there. And so Brian's probably just having a great time.
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
I would imagine so. He's hanging out with his brothers and his mother, and they're having a blast together. I would like to think so. Stevie, I have to ask you. I'm hopeful because I didn't prep you or anything, but I was hoping that maybe you wrote something. You have such a way with words. Did you write anything down, or were you inspired when Brian left us?
How do I unmute?
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mhm.
What I did do that was like writing something. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
The thing about Brian that not a lot of people have mentioned, and they mentioned it a little bit, that I think is striking is as a friend. Everyone's talking about the celebrity and all the great songs, and I love all of that. But as a friend, since the 60s, when he would pick me up at the motel, Beach Boys put me in a motel in the 60s when I wrote Little Bird. I had a payphone. I didn't even have my own phone on the corner. And I heard Little Bird over the phone because I didn't have money to go to the session at Capitol. And I remember all those years, but throughout the constant friendship, and when I had my eye surgery, he would take me to the doctor and he would drive, and he could have gotten a limo or everything. And when we went to the concerts, sometimes he would go separately in the Mercedes. He wouldn't go with the bus. And I got so many experiences like that. The everyday Brian, the way he loved to tip the waitresses and waiters, and he considered everyday people just as important as any celebrity. And I never met a guy like that. And people said, he's tipping so much. It's his money. You let him tip what he wants. I just think it's very important to humanize some of what Brian was. And he was a great human. He had challenges like everyone else when it fall into sadness. But the most powerful thing is that Brian Wilson was a really caring person that wanted to put goodness, not just into his music. He's the one on World of Peace that called Mo Austin, called everyone, and everyone thought, what is he wasting his time on a piece? But he was just as instrumental, even with suggesting the words in the high part he sang on Lonely Man. People don't even probably know about that album, but except for what you've called attention to it before. But I mean, that's a whole side of Brian that I think is a lot of people didn't always see it. Maybe they felt it through his music. So that's what I would bring a lot of that to it. Does that something I could say?
Yeah. I'm just going to do this real quick. I'm going to hawk something for you, Stevie. Folks, this is a brand new CD of Stevie's. It's called I Love My Life. And I listened to it just 2 days ago for the first time.
I'm going to run off camera real quick.
Okay. And Stevie, I got to tell you, this reminded me of the Friends album. It reminded me of, it reminded me of Brian. It reminded me of Dennis, and it took me back. It really healed. It really settled my soul.
I Love My Life is very close to what Brian and I did on Lonely Man. Do you remember the high voice he had? And I just sang it, if you call what I do singing, whatever. He was so beautiful. And I think that's a beautiful record. You remember that track?
Oh yeah, I like that. That's what one of the things I love about your, for lack of a better word, diversity, is your spoken word against your singing voice. And that's what I like about this album, is how you're doing spoken word, and then there's a recording, and then you do spoken word, and there's a recording. And it's
Brian was there, and I had Jeff Peters was my engineer, and Willie Aaron and Todd Lawrence, and wonderful people that
Randell and Luann.
Randell and Luann sang on it. Susan Cowsill, a lot of people. Teresa Cow. I mean, there's so many people.
This album, Stevie, it reached me in such a way that I felt somewhat healed from Brian's passing after I listened to it. So thank you for that.
Well, Brian is a healing force, but it's very important, the everyday life, just like how you and I talk. that we do a lot of conversations like Lee Dempsey I saw, and Dennis Dyken, and people that probably know me a little, and maybe more than I know, and David Mark and other people. But I have a love for all of them. It's just, I'm 83. I'm 6 months older than Brian. I feel blessed to even be here after I've been through heart surgeries and everything. But Brian was a trooper. And I can't tell you, the funniest thing is he would call me 5:30 in the morning. Stevie, what are you doing? I mean, I said, Brian, it's 5:30 in the morning. And then we would call like Justin and Jonah and Carney and Wendy, like early in the morning. And like, I think we drove some of them nuts, but Brian had that kind of personality. We would even call people from payphones if we didn't have a phone with us. And one time up at the deli, where the Beverly Glen Deli, where was Brian's favorite place, he asked the owner, can we use the phone? And I think we kept it 3 hours. So they never offered us the phone again. That was Brian. I mean, just so many fun things. And we did songs in the studio that never got much of a release. But, well, I know you know some of them. Lucy Jones, Whoppin' and Boppin'. Brian had a whole side of them. They weren't always hits, but they were so much fun. And I just feel very grateful to be a small part of this whole thing. And
we're grateful. We're grateful too, Stevie.
Yes,
we're
Steve.
grateful that you're a part of this too.
Absolutely.
Lee Dempsey, I love Lee Dempsey. Should we tell the funny story, David? Do you remember?
Which one?
You gotta tell the dog story.
Tell it. I think David might not have heard it. Please tell it.
Okay. So, but back in, I don't know, early days of Endless Summer Quarterly, Stevie sent a check-in. This is back when I had my little Maltese dog, Snowball. And if you happen to leave something on the floor, Snowball would eat it. And there's the whole story of my dog ate my homework, my dog ate the check, or whatever. Well, it actually happened. So I was going through mail. Stevie sent a check. I dropped it on the floor, and a minute later, I'm looking for the check, and the dog had eaten.
The dog ate my check that I sent you, David. I think that's pretty funny. I remember.
Like, Stevie, do you mind sending another check? Because my dog ate it.
Yeah. Well, I think everyone here, I would exclude Lee and I, but all of you, I think everyone that's connected to Brian's music, I think all of you have made a musical and lasting impression in the world. Ronnie, with your music, you certainly have. Stevie, I mean, there's no one like you. Thank God for that. Dennis, what you guys did with, what the Smithereens did, and, clear intention. You can hear the influence in your music.
Covering Girl Don't Tell Me in your early sets.
Yeah, we thank you. Thank you for those kind words, Dave.
Oh,
yeah,
Ronnie. Hi, Ronnie.
Hi. Hi, Stevie.
Yeah, the Smithereens recorded a cover of Girl Don't Tell Me on our first EP in 1980. And Carl Wilson was doing the solo tour, I think in 82. And he played the Bottom Line in New York. And we went to the show. And after the show, if you've never been to the Bottom Line, it was like a 400-seater with a tiny dressing room. But he welcomed people to come to the dressing room and have a quick chat. So there was a line of fans, and he greeted every one of them. And I presented him with this EP, Girls About Town, a 7-inch. I gave it to Carl. I told him that, in fact, we covered Girl Don't Tell Me on it. I hope he listened to it. I couldn't say, but at least I did pass it along to him. And that's a good feeling, And I'll never forget how kind he was to everybody and took the time to answer questions. It was just a beautiful thing.
Dennis, I remember seeing you guys doing Girl Don't Tell Me.
I'll bet probably at Folk City, Ronnie.
Folk City, yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's
Dennis
cool.
organized a beautiful Brian Wilson night there.
Were you there for that?
Oh yeah.
1985. Yeah.
I sang Breakaway at it. And I wanted to do She Knows Me Too Well, but Marshall Crenshaw wanted it.
Oh, wow! You were on that show. I forgot about that.
Well,
Yeah.
I keep asking you throughout the years if you ever got the 4-track tape mixed.
I don't have every song. I think I have one or two songs. I have to locate that tape and see what's on it. For those out there, this was in 1985, February of 1985, at Folk City in Manhattan, a small club. Todd Abramson and I presented a tribute night to Brian, and we enlisted a bunch of great performers, Ronnie and Marshall Crenshaw, Cub Coda. Do you remember Cub Coda performed that night? Yeah. And oh boy, just a bunch of folks. Andy Chernoff from the Dictators, and I was in the house band, and we would back up these people. It was a wonderful night. It was before there was a lot of tributes to Brian.
Yes, you were right there early on before it became fashionable.
Yeah, and it was a wonderful night. I'm sure you remember the fun we had that night.
That wasn't where Ben Vaughn's famous song came from, was it?
Well, he performed it there that night. Yes, he did. Yeah.
I love Ben Vaughn.
Yeah, Ben's great. Yeah.
And who were the guys that were really into Pet Sounds? Was it the Bleachers or the Beachers or?
Oh, wait a minute. The Breakers.
The Breakers.
Yeah, that was a guy called Frank Kowalski who passed away some years ago, but one of the more talented guys that had the Beach Boys spirit and a real knack for harmony. Yeah, he was a real talented guy. And we also had a trio of girls that did The One You Can't Have and He's a Doll. I don't know if you remember that, but that was a thrill to play all these songs. I did Denny's drums.
How suitable is that?
Right.
All the Doors loved Brian and Dennis and John Densmore. I've done some performances with him, and they all loved Brian and Dennis and Carl, and they were so supportive. I guess you knew that maybe, but very, very much so.
That's great to hear, because I have heard that Morrison was a fan, but you don't hear a lot of people talking about that.
Well, yeah, because I didn't know Jim as well as I knew the other ones, but Densmore and I lately, he spoke at my art opening, and he said, when he introduced himself, "I'm not Dennis Wilson." That's how he started it. But he was so complimentary of all those harmonies and all those things, and I don't think people know that much. Jim loved, he favored the Beach Boys over, I think, almost anyone, at least the time when I talked with him.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Well, yeah. and Bruce Spotnick, I guess, had already engineered some sessions for the Beach Boys by then, so maybe
that's true. Yeah,
that's right. Well, Richard Dickie Mayer, Stevie knew him, and I think John knew him as well. Dickie Mayer dated Carol Botnick, Bruce's sister, and Dickie Mayer was over there all the time back between 64 to 60 till 70, because he worked at the Radiant Radish, and then they left.
Did anyone talk to Arnie Geller?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Arnie's what a sweetheart. What a
lovely guy. And Steve Korthoff, they were like amazing in that office, Brother Records office in the old days.
Yes, and running the Radiant Radish too.
Yeah, plus that was the funniest thing.
That's a strange. It is a funny thing. It's such an. I mean, if you just ask a person on the street, you say, "What famous rock and roller opened a health food stop and wore his bathrobe to work?"
Yes, Stevie, did you ever go to the Radiant Radish?
All the time. Brian took me there. I was really involved. If you ask Arnie, and Steve is no longer with us, but Arnie still is, as far as I've heard.
Yes,
I talked to him on the phone. It was wonderful. It was fun. Brian would say, "You want to go down?" And he'd pick me up, because I wasn't driving that much in those days. Usually, believe it or not, the period when he was getting show around, he would drive me around. He liked being the one driving, and it was interesting. But it was such a fun place, and all kinds of people would come in there, and he'd be behind the cash register. He knew how to do everything. He loved it. For the time he supported it, was really a lot of fun in there.
So were the stories that he gave away more stuff than he sold true?
Oh yeah, he would buy his friends and do things like that.
Of course,
Well,
that's true.
I don't think he did it for the money. I think he wanted to be good to Arnie and to Steve and his family. But it was quite a place. It was like the place. I mean, you would see, and people going just because Brian would, the chance of seeing Brian handling money. He knew how to do it. It wasn't like, I mean, he knew how to. It was amazing. But he did go with the bathrobe sometime or like that. I mean, it just was amazing. Or he just picked me up. He said, "Let's go over the Radiant Radish," and he wanted to help. And that was Arnie's. They were in there working too, at the same time.
Did he say he was into other people being healthy, but not necessarily himself?
Well, you could say that.
I think so.
Some of the meals we had, I know Dennis heard about it. Some of the meals that we would have, it like I remember one night him and Melinda and I went out to some steakhouse in Beverly Hills. It was after, I think it was the session of the album, you know, the one that Elton was on and Paul McCartney and all that. We went there one night and I couldn't finish my steak. And Brian said, could I have it? I said, sure. And Melinda got mad at me because she said, he's got enough food. I said, but it's protein, you know, and that didn't work. So I was on the outs for that day, but it was, he loved eating too. And he really enjoyed it.
He loved his steak.
I had more steaks with him. I think I don't even eat steak anymore, but I have enough to last a lifetime. I'm still living off the energy of the steaks back from the 60s.
Hey, John, we haven't heard much from you. Is there going back to that time when you became road manager for the group in the 60s? Brian didn't tour as much as the rest of the guys. You know, the guys toured without Brian. He stayed back. Is there anything that you recall, an interaction with Brian that comes to mind where he made an impression on you, whether it be musically or personally?
Yeah, were there any surprise appearances by Brian?
There was off and on. There was a few where Brian would pop in, but early on, I mean, you know, you guys talked about how spontaneous Brian is, and he, you know, for me, I look back at the very early days. You guys probably can too, when Murray was actually trying to produce the records and Brian was getting frustrated. I mean, Murray was in the control room, and every time they would hit a different note that Murray wanted, he'd tell him.
I'm so happy to see you, John. I can't believe it. From after all those years.
So he said, sorry, John, you said he would hit the talk back.
Yeah, and he would sing the note that he wanted them to sing and the rhythm that he wanted them to use. And Murray's voice is very gruff. I mean, it's horrible to listen to. He could hit a note, but it's some register that nobody knows about. And I mean, you could see that Brian was just didn't know what to do in those cases. Yeah. And finally, he did explode. He talked to the guys about it, and they let Murray go. And from that point on, Brian, I mean, in the studio, mainly we were at Capitol Records in those days, but Brian just blossomed in the studio. I mean, he'd put the guys, he'd work with them, moving them in and out from the Neumann microphone to position them so their voices were just the right volume. And every time the wrong note, he'd sing it to them so they could know what note to sing and work out the song in that way. And everything just started going smoothly. Mm-hmm. And would add to Brian Wilson. I mean, you know, Arnie was a great guy, good friend of Brian's, and them opening that store gave Brian another thing to do, and he needed something else to do. I mainly hung out with Dennis and Carl, and Dennis and I would go to the beach every day and do something. But Brian just blossomed from there. And to me, musically, you know, Brian, I've heard Brian talk about he gets into another world when he plays the piano. his mind just focuses on that. To me, he did the same thing in the studio. He was a good producer. He could engineer if he wanted to, but in the early days, the boards were not like they are today. We'd all grab some faders, and Brian would tell us exactly where to bring them up and down during mixing the song down and everything. So we had to have 4 guys working the board, mixing it just like Brian wanted. And we all learned along with Brian at that stage. And to me, those were the real fun days.
Yeah. But watching that, John and Stevie, you two, I think would know this best. Is it accurate to say that Brian, because I get this when I listen to Beach Boys music or Pet Sounds, whatever it may be, even Brian's solo career, that Brian really communicated with love. Did you sense, when he, regardless of the song, regardless of whether I'm talking about I Get Around or Love and Mercy, it doesn't matter. I'm just talking about Brian as a person and an individual. Stevie, going back to your point about the other side of Brian and what a lovely person he was.
Brian communicated constantly in the studio. And
I agree with him. He was a loving person. What is the question exactly that you're?
Well, through his. I think when most people think of Brian and the music, whatever their favorite song is or album or whatever it is, that if let's say for an example, somebody's favorite song is I Get Around, just as an example, but would they necessarily think about Brian as a loving being and his way to communicate? Because he was a loving being, whether he was writing a fast song or a slow song or working on Pet Sounds. So I guess that's what I'm trying to I hope I'm communicating correctly, is the way that Brian communicated, the feel. Yeah.
He always did things in a loving way. I always tell people that Brian is one of the most honest people I know. And he is in his communication. He is, I saw a Larry King interview with him one time. And Larry was asking him about being on the road and was that fun? And you guys had a good time? And then he turned to Brian. Brian was there for a purpose to help find some of his musicians that were trapped in Asia for something. So he had a purpose to be there. As soon as he got done with that, he got up and started to walk away. And Larry said, no, come back and sit down. But anyway, so Larry's asking him about the road things. And finally, Larry said, Brian, did you meet a lot of girls on the road? Did you have a lot of fun with girls? You know what I mean? And Brian just kind of looked at him, and Larry said, you know what I'm talking about? And Brian said, did you mess around with girls? And Brian said, no. And Larry King said, why? And Brian looked at him and said, because I love my wife. And that's not only Brian being honest on the road, that's Brian being honest in his marriage. Mm-hmm. And he was just a pure person in that way. And in talking to musicians and people and engineers and everything in the studio, he was always communicating to the musicians, to the engineers, to everybody that was there, focused on what he was doing completely. But I think when he talks about playing the piano and he goes into a different mindset, I think he does that when he's producing also. He is so, we had 50-piece orchestras in the studio, and Brian could tell that one of the violin players, one string was not exactly perfect, and he would walk out to the studio and fix it for him and go back in and say, okay, let's go. I mean, he was that good and that honest with everything, and he would not point to the guy and said, you're not in tune. He would just fix it and say, thank you, and let's go, here we go, and go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
I found that I agree with everything he said, but Brian also, if something wasn't right, he would find a way to fix it without making it personal to the person. He would fix it. Like if someone was in the wrong key or like that, he would do it. He might not be forceful, but he would get it done the way he wanted it to do.
Yeah, even with the Wrecking Crew, I mean, those guys are great. I mean, I always loved to watch Hal Blaine play the drums. But, you know, they'd make a mistake and he'd correct it. But he would also at the same time say, and Larry Knechtel may be on piano, he said, I heard that little riff you did. I like that. Let's put that in too. So he would open it up for them to be creative. And
he was, he was incredible that way because he knew what he wanted, but he was still so open. I mean, you hear that on the Pet Sound sessions. He was still so open to what was happening around him and so present in his moment. He already knew what he wanted. He already had it figured out in his head, but he still was so open to, in the moment, if somebody played something or did something, he was all about accepting it.
I think, to me, Brian doesn't just know where he's going. He actually hears all of the instruments and all of the voices in his head. And if what he's hearing doesn't match that, then he's right there with it, saying, do.
And also, Brian would use anything like the dogs barking, bring the housekeeper in if it was right. He would take any sounds of the wind, the crickets one night on that original America. He filmed the crickets with a small mic, and it became part of the background of the track. And you remember it's beautiful. He would use anything for music, even if it wasn't written down or like that. He would know, and he'd have it arranged.
That's absolutely true. He was always looking for the right sound of things. One time, Dennis and I were water skiing at the Salton Sea, and we got a message. They came out and got us. We got a message that Paul McCartney's come into the studio. So we threw our stuff together and drove back down to the studio. And Brian, I forget what, I think it might have been vegetables that walked in the studio. And Brian had sent someone out. And you know those little wind-up things that spin around for kids and they make a humming sound?
The tops.
Yeah, we had about 10 of those. And we're all pumping those things and recording it. And Paul thinks that we're just playing a joke on them. But then we got more, you know, and then we're eating carrots and lettuce into the microphone. Paul's watching us do that. So he wasn't sure that we were messing with him or we were really doing a song.
Well, with Brian, it turns out it wasn't really a song.
Yeah.
Clever song, too. A very clever song.
Probably inspired by his and Arnie's health food store.
Yes, because it did. Arnie did tell me that the idea of the health food store did start taking place back in 66 and 67, years before they ever opened it. Yeah. Well, guys, add anything you like. Ronnie, Dennis, hop in here. I think, we've had and somebody wrote that Jim Morrison's favorite Beach Boys album was Wild Honey over here.
Huh.
That's pretty good.
Well, I was just going to throw in there. There's very few people that can say that their name was name dropped on a Beach Boys album, but John's one of them, right?
Yeah.
No call
that's right.
from Portoff Parks and Grillo.
Yeah.
Be here in the morning.
Be here in the morning. Yes.
Oh, great.
Yes, this is the Parks.
Yeah.
Very
But
cool.
it wasn't Van Dyke Parks. It was John Parks.
No, it's this gentleman. That's so cool. Yeah, it is so cool. Nick Grillo, John Parks, and Steve Korthoff.
Yes, Korthoff.
John Parks. John Parks, do you remember how your memory that when we were going to do that trip with the Maharishi and you were going to take me out for clothes and then it got canceled for me to open that show? Do you remember any of that or not?
I do vaguely, but yeah, I do remember.
And you were showing me how to coordinate wardrobe. I remember all of that. I mean, in my mind, it was big. Probably you had so many other things going on then, but I was like early 20s and just getting wet there, and you knew all of it. And Al says you got to talk to this guy, and you were like kind of advising me on everything. I just remember that. You may not. I do remember. And you had those nice clothes on all the time and all that stuff. So you had influenced me, and now I took up the clothing thing. So well, thank you.
Certainly a good friend of Brian's, I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, guys, I don't, I think we could talk about Brian forever.
Yeah.
But I was wondering what closing comments you all might have to, as you reflect. This is Brian's birthday today, and what thoughts or reflections you might have.
I have one thing that I saw an interview in 2011 from a guy in England, and he was interviewing Brian, and to me, this is who Brian is. He was talking to Brian about the careers of the Beach Boys and how they've done and the Beatle thing with them and everything. And he said that, there's been a lot of conflicts. What do you think about those things? How do you think back about the Beach Boys? And he said, I think it was just a beautiful, wonderful thing for the world. And the guy said, what about those conflicts? And Brian said, there's always little conflicts, but overall, it's a beautiful thing that covers all of that up.
Oh, that is fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that in that moment, Brian was present enough with that interviewer to say, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
The love was more powerful.
Brian doesn't look at the negative. He looks at the positive, and that's who he is.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll add about Brian, I think we've said it all, that he really gave the world love, and he spoke directly to our hearts in a way that was, we're lucky that we grew up in the era where he was able to do it in a rock and roll way, so we could appreciate it without, it being too deep, even though it was deep, but it was given to us on a rock and roll 45. It was so cool. That's the word I was looking for. Brian, the coolest people are unassumingly so. Brian embodied a certain kind of cool, not a detachment. I mean, as we use when something is cool, Brian was the ultimate cool guy in such a natural way, through his music, through his personality, and everything about his honesty. He was the ultimate cool guy. Something when I was a kid, I wanted to grow up to be like Brian Wilson. And all the Beach Boys seemed like they were our older cousins, or older brothers, and we wanted to be like them. And Brian is, that's who I wanted to be like. And I don't consciously try it. I think we all have just taken so much from him. I think we all have a lot of his spirit in us, just because we love him so much and he spoke to us so much, and it's a natural thing. And I'm just grateful that he was in our lives at the same time he was alive,
Yeah. I've often thought of him at times, because a guy like him would write, "Guess I'm dumb," or "I just wasn't made for these times." That there's been times where I've thought of him as almost an accidental tourist in his own coolness.
There you go. That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Like he had no idea how cool he was.
And innocence in a way,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ronnie, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's been nice sharing this today, because it makes you feel like you have company and similar feelings, and so I appreciate that. I mean, just love the guy. I named my firstborn after him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Michael, my wife named Michael, but it wasn't after Michael.
Just for clarification.
A lot of people ask me that. But I named him Brian Paul, after Brian and Paul McCartney. So I just love the guy, man. I love him when I'm listening to him and when I'm watching him in interviews. And guy's adorable. What can I say?
Yeah.
He was like what Dennis was saying. He was cool because he was cool with it himself. He wasn't cool in that he knew all this hip crap.
Yeah.
I mean, his heart seemed more into like the Four Freshmen and that kind of thing. He was very sophisticated in his musical tastes. Uh, and he just combined it with rock, as everybody knows, because that's the age he was.
Mhm, mhm.
But I don't know what to say about him. He's
No.
greatest.
Loved all you guys.
He's given us so much pleasure, man.
Yeah.
Boy, he sure has. Lee.
His voice, beautiful.
Yeah. 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 Lee, what are your thoughts? Closing thoughts?
And as I said at the outset, I think, this was a day that we all anticipated would happen. And I've even said, it's something that I've been prepared for the last 20 years, and not knowing when Brian would be with us and not with us. But the music transcends all that. Music will be around forever. And the music is what touches me in my soul. There's times that I'm in a funk, and the only thing that can solve it for me or make me feel better is putting Pet Sounds on. And it's something about that album. It just gets into my soul. And as moody as it is, somehow it's uplifting to me. And I come out of that and I'm like, okay, yeah, I feel so much better. And it'll always be there for me to, for that to happen. Brian physically not being with us anymore is not going to take that away from me.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm one to talk a lot, and I think I've spoken enough. Stevie, if you would do us the honor of closing this out this evening.
I would like to say Brian taught me a humility and a kindness that infused. People gave me credit for a lot of the stuff, but it was Brian equally on the peace track. And he forgave Mike. All those things that you may not see in the press, because he told me he let go of all that. He became innocent. And when we did Child of Winter, Carney and Wendy were 5 and 6, and he had them in there doing the sleigh bells and the kazoo. I don't know if you remember that record. Never got much airplay. It came out like a day before Christmas. But the whole family, the way he brought everyone together. Now that people say, oh, that's not a great Beach Boy track. But the fact that it was so pure and so innocent, and the childlikeness of it, later. But Brian had something beyond just the sadness. People love his sad songs, but what about his happy songs, his good song? He showed a lot of that too, not just a sad Brian, but an uplifted Brian. And I like the fact that he touched everyone's life with that at a level of purity I've never seen in rock and roll, and that's for sure.
Oh, beautifully said.
Yeah.
Ronnie, Dennis, John, Stevie, Lee, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you very, very much. Yeah. Great to see you all.
All right. God bless.
God bless.
Brian.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Have a good evening and happy birthday,